Dude, we were having this mandatory meeting, and she started it off with talking about her cat having like bowel problems.
Oh no.
Yeah.
So automatically, it's like you gotta be careful around her because of her cat.
Well, that's the thing, dude. It's remote too, right? So like, I don't even like really know what this person looks like. But then
Yeah, it's like how are you really supposed to, you know? I think they just tell you that sort of stuff because, like, you are working remote, so it's like, oh, I have to make myself seem like more of a real person rather than just some voice on a computer, right?
yeah, it was like a bunch of like get to know you stuff they always do. But like, yeah, dude, she was saying that, I was like, all right, can we stop talking about this? Like, what kind of cat food's making your cat shit? No,
Well,
telling us
it's
what your
like,
apartment smells like right now. Like,
yeah, it smells really bad when we got them on the IAMS, but the science diet is down. But really, I find it best when I cook my own rice and chicken and and feed it to her directly. Yeah.
dude, I'll just say the amount of detail it went into is I know she's paying $2.60 a can for cat food, dude. Like,
Fuck. That's
uh,
not too bad in this economy. It's not too bad. She's probably buying her the cheap stuff, man. That's probably the problem.
some fancy feast, yeah.
Yeah, you gotta. It's like really the good stuff is like $6 a can.
Heavy.
Bored.
Heavy.
I am heavy, heavy, heavy. Bored.
I may say that the male is entirely hostile. No! Dinner,
Resources.
life, friends is boring. We must not say so.
Thanks again for taking the time, dude. This is last minute, but I wanted to do it.
Yeah, and I need to get it out in time for Christmas. This really, like you told me, like a few days before, so that's not really last minute for me. Like last minute would be like the day of.
Damn. That's
Yeah,
a
I've got time, so I'm like, yeah, I love this, dude.
podcasting pro, dude. Yeah, man, for sure. But this is the Heavy Board Christmas Special 2024. I keep wanting to say 2025, but it isn't 2025 yet. But this is the second Christmas special we've ever done. And Erik is joining us at Bazillion Plus, also known as Organized Meat on Twitter and all other social medias. Erik, welcome back to Heavy Board.
Thank you for having me, Andrew.
Of course. Listeners that haven't listened yet, Erik and I did Robinson Crusoe together. Was that like episode 47, I think? Something like that, which I think was almost a year ago.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, about that.
Like fall 23?
Yeah, I mean, it must have been.
Yeah.
I still at my old job, so yeah, towards the end, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And today we're going into two Christmas movies because that's what we like to do on these Heavy Board Christmas specials. We're going into The Shop Around the Corner from 1940 and It's a Wonderful Life from 1947. And listeners will know that is It's a Wonderful Life. I talk about it all the time. It's one of my favorite movies. And yeah, I was thinking about like, all right, let's warm up with The Shop Around the Corner because I feel like It's a Wonderful Life is going to be a long ass. It's going to be a long
Yeah,
ass
yeah, no,
conversation.
that's going to be
dude.
definitely the bigger one.
Yeah. Oh, let me switch the fan on real quick. It's getting. Whenever I close my office doors, it's like starts getting stuffy in here pretty quick.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Do you have air conditioning?
What?
You have air conditioning?
Yeah, but we have the heat on right now. But I mean, it's not running because it's kind of warmer today.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
no.
But apparently, we looked it up. This place, this like the little like den that they have, it used to be just like an open space area. So I guess it probably just like wasn't meant to be closed in ever.
Yeah, so they kind of had like a little air flowing anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Something like that. But all right, yeah, Eric, what's your history with the shop around the corner?
Um, I probably saw it, I don't know, maybe 20 years ago for the first time. So I don't know. I was just like, I was in my, mid 20s. I was really into film. Um, and, I love Jimmy Stewart and Ernst Lubitsch. So, I was a big fan of Jimmy Stewart and all of his stuff. But like Ernst Lubitsch always made these great comedies, so I wanted to check more of that out. And Shop Around the Corner, I don't even think I saw it during Christmas time when I first saw it. It came on like AMC, I think, and yeah, I watched it there and I loved it. It's a great quaint story, and Jimmy Stewart's great. He's like the typical Jimmy Stewart character, like the good guy that has some minor faults, like very minor, but in the end is always like the good, honest, reputable guy that comes out on top.
Yeah, yeah.
So
What's your history with Stewart? When did you start like being a Jimmy Stewart fan? Because I'm a big Jimmy Stewart fan, and this is, listeners didn't know, is themed around Jimmy Stewart. These two movies.
yeah.
Yeah. When did Jimmy Stewart come in? Because I know a lot of us. Yeah, like if your parents were watching movies, like you come into it like pretty as soon as you start watching movies, basically.
Yeah, well, I mean, so I did see, It's a Wonderful Life when I was a kid.
Right.
But I wasn't really like, I wasn't struck by him as much then until like I grew older, and it was really Vertigo and Rear Window, Man Who Knew Too Much, those Hitchcock films that really introduced me to him because I was really into Hitchcock. And then after that, it was just like some of his westerns, like The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance.
Oh yeah, it's another one of my favorites.
Yeah, that's a great one. It just Harvey was a big one for me also.
Oh yeah, I always forget about Harvey, dude.
Yeah, another just really good typical Jimmy Stewart role where he is just, look, again, his big fault there, he was a booze hound, right? But
they all were back then, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't really, he was more of like, like the Otis from Andy Griffith, like type of hobo, like just the nice, profoundly intelligent drunk. And yeah, that was him in Harvey. But yeah, so like those films just like really endeared him to me. And yeah, Shop Around the Corner was like another one of those that was just like, God, this is like the Jimmy Stewart. Like he was so different in the Hitchcock films. Like,
oh yeah,
he was more serious. Like he was still always that innocent guy who like found something, but it was never like this. He was never like that altruistic character like he was in Harvey or It's a Wonderful Life or Shop Around the Corner.
Yeah, for sure. And I was thinking about this watching these movies and stuff as we were kind of, and Eric and I are like talking about it a little bit too, as we were like kind of watching these and like planning this out last minute. It was like Stewart is such an icon. Like he's such an icon of Americana. Like he is an American icon. Like,
yeah.
I was thinking like, cause like thinking this question and being like, oh yeah, when would I come into Jimmy Stewart? I was like, I think I was like aware of him. Like I was aware of him before I even knew who he was, or that like actors are a thing, and that like it was just like some guy that was like always in those black and white movies that were on TV because he's in so many classics, and they really only play like the classic ones, especially when we like growing up like in the cable era, Turner Classic Movies and stuff. Yeah, Harvey. He was the guy in Harvey. He was like, yeah, I think I had seen It's a Wonderful Life, like at some point, like, when you're too young to even understand it and you're just bored by it or whatever because your parents are putting it on. It's like, and I was just like, yeah, like his voice kind of like lives within me, like it kind of just like lives inside me for like he's so distinct. Yeah, like this kind of
he has
yeah.
he definitely has that voice that like yeah, I remember that's also one of the other things, like, so when I was growing up, like, you know, in living it's like Saturday Night Live, yeah, like Dana Carvey era. Like, I remember seeing an early stand-up special from Dana Carvey. It was like probably like late 80s, early 90s. So I was pretty young, and he was like talking about, like, he did this impression of Jimmy Stewart, like picking up a hooker and getting and that always stuck with me. And that was sort of even before I knew who Jimmy Stewart like really was. Like, maybe I had seen It's a Wonderful Life, or something else, like when I was younger from my parents, but like, and really
Rear Window was always on like cable too. Like they like played that all the time. Like
yeah. And so so I just like, I knew about the legend Jimmy Stewart before I kind of knew about all of his work.
Yeah, right? Absolutely. Yeah, the legend of Jimmy Stewart. Dude, that's the perfect way to put it. Like, American legend of just this actor who, I mean, I remember I watched like Apache or something, or what, some Western he did when he was much older. Like,
like Shenandoah.
Yeah, it might have been like where he's like this kind of like it's about like the Apache attacking the postal service in Arizona.
Oh, okay.
What the hell is it called? Somebody out there probably knows. God.
Yeah, I know a huge Jimmy Stewart fan is listening and like, oh my God.
Yeah.
You know, it was the Shootist or something like that.
Yeah, dude. And it
Shine
was,
Bottom.
yeah, and he like falls in love with one of the Apache girls or whatever, and it's like becomes like this like broker between like the white man and the Apache or whatever. But yeah, that one was kind of bad, but that was like his like older years. Like Rear Window, like these kind of, he was so iconic. This figure that just kind of looms over not just American cinema. I mean, maybe because American cinema is just so huge all over the world. Like he is kind of like a global kind of like, I don't want to say mythic, but he's like rising to that status a little bit of like, yeah, like you said, the legend of Jimmy Stewart. But for me, like I'd never watched this movie before Shop Around the Corner from 1940. And this is like a relatively younger Stewart too, right? Like,
yeah, no, he's younger. Yeah. I think this was before It's a Wonderful Life though, right?
Yeah, it's like 7 years before and pre-World War II.
Yeah. Which, yeah, I know. I always found it odd that, so I know it was based on this play written by a Hungarian guy, and so that's why all the signs in the shop are in Hungarian.
Right. It's supposed to take place in Budapest or something, yeah.
Yeah, but everyone's speaking English, which was like common back then. But
and no accents. Yeah, my wife was watching with me. She was like, "They don't have any accents." Like, I was like, "I don't think they did that in the 40s." Like,
no, they didn't. Even like after World War II, and they're making Nazi movies. It was like all the Nazis spoke with like British accents. You know, it was like, yeah, Hitler would have been horrified. But yeah, no. So I always thought it was strange that it's just, why didn't they make the signs in English? They could have set this in like a small town in Connecticut.
Exactly.
It was always weird to me that they kept the like foreign element there. But I guess, I don't know. Maybe there's just like a dispute with the playwright. I didn't really look into it, but that always that always struck me as odd with the film. But it also, the fact that, like, I mean, I don't know. I've never been to Budapest.
Yeah,
don't know what it's been like in the 40s. And even people in the 40s in America had never been to Budapest, and they don't know what it's like. So it was very easy to probably portray like some sort of that kind of small town, like, but in a big city where everyone knows each other environment a lot easier, because it just seems like everyone in this play knows each other. Like all the people in the city, like it seems like a very close-knit community. but it's in Budapest, which is a very large city.
Yeah, huge.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's true. It does kind of, it feels like it's just set in like an American like Connecticut town or something, like, you
Mhm.
know, hour north of New York or something. Like, uh,
Yeah,
yeah, like just kind of your typical. And I guess that's, you know, nobody knew any better back then. They weren't going for like accuracy, like you said, and like those that time it was all about the story. But yeah, based on that play by I looked up his name, but we'll see the pronunciation. Nicholas Laszlo.
hmm yeah.
I had never heard of him, but yeah, I'd never really even seen this movie before. I just kind of knew about it, and it would always be like showing up in the holiday streaming stuff. I guess because it's old, so it's cheap to have the rights to stream it. Because it's only kind of tangentially about Christmas, like.
Yeah, the climax has to do with Christmas, right? But leading up to that, it's like a few weeks before Christmas, and there's different drama. But you do know that Christmas is coming throughout the whole film.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean that's the thing about Christmas too. I guess that's often how it's used because like it's such an important day in American life and really a lot of Western life, all of
Mhm.
Western life really. It's like
Yeah.
uh it's like a big important day. So if like if some tragedy happens on it or something or some love story, it automatically is like elevated by that fact that like, oh, it's Christmas. Like, and I mean, I talk about it on this podcast a lot. And actually, I went to ask you this earlier, like, kind of Christmas. You know, like I'm always asking this question. I did on the last year's Christmas special, and like I continue to. I did it on the Christmas Carol episode as well, which was the Christmas before listeners. So we have a couple different Christmas episodes now, dropping the gifts. But just like about Christmas, like kind of Christmas was always such like a big thing in my mind. And I guess that was because of my parents and stuff like that. You know, like making it like a nice special time and all of that, something that I looked forward to every year. But I wanted to ask, like, what's your experience with Christmas? How do you view Christmas? Like, you know, yeah, all that shit.
I mean, it was. I always enjoyed it. My parents always really, got into it. We always got a tree, decorated the house, put lights up outside, and everything. Like it was always really a great time. I was an only child, so it wasn't like it was just me and my parents, which I really liked, but it wasn't like kind of how I see it typically portrayed in movies, which is like it's usually a larger family, and then grandparents come over and cousins and uncles. And I mean, we just didn't have that around us. Like my grandfather, my grandparents lived in L.A. and they didn't want to trek out on Christmas. It was just, and like my parents didn't want to go over there, so it just we spent the time at the house. But it was always like a nice dinner. My mom always made like a turkey or a ham. And I've still always enjoyed Christmas, even if I don't decorate the house or put up a tree or anything. I just like that people have like a general, like, they're in better spirits during Christmas, like people really are.
Yeah,
And I mean that's what films like Shop Around the Corner and It's a Wonderful Life like are just really embody, is that you know people are always like willing to give more of themselves during the holidays and think more of others.
yeah, for
And
sure.
especially because it's also kind of the end of the year, like it's a new year, so it's people are reflecting more on what they've done, and sometimes they see mistakes, and that's they want to correct it, so that's when some sort of generosity or goodwill like comes out. And I mean, we should have that throughout the year, but look, at least someone's doing it at some point in the year.
Last minute donations for
Yeah.
tax write-offs. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's how I always think of it too. Like it's people call it like it's the magic of Christmas, right? Like, or Christmas magic or something like that. And I think like, people can be cynical and scoff at that, but I think there is something to that where it's like it's an energy, It's kind of like a celebratory energy it's yeah, I think it for me as a kid and even now, like I look forward to Christmas and I view it as more important than even like New Year's or something. Like I guess New Year's is like the party day, but like there's nothing really like special about New Year's, you know? Like Christmas is more special than like, and even in the sense of that it is now, obviously it's like a Christian holiday, which we're going to get to, listeners, about like how there's basically like, yeah, very much kind of like Christian themes in these, but it's like it's bigger than that too. It's way bigger than that, you know, like it is just I don't know, I mean even bigger than yeah, sorry.
Like Christians, like it's not just Christians that celebrate Christmas, and that's like, yeah, that's kind of the whole thing, is that everyone loves a Christmas movie. Like, okay, all these atheistic, you know, blue-haired, I'm never gonna have sex with a Trump supporter women, people love these Christmas Hallmark movies that are just
a royal
cheesy.
Christmas, yeah.
Yes, exactly. They love all that shit. And it's Christmas, Christ, it's religion.
Yeah.
And yet they will say like, oh, I'm not Christian, but they still like that stuff. And I mean, you have to sort of, you know, there's a subtlety to that opinion, I think.
Yeah.
They have. That's like, okay, well, yeah, you say you don't like it. Like you're against everything, all the patriarchy, the religion, like, you know, fascism, whatever. Like, you know, you're an atheist, you believe in nothing, but you love this like nice romantic comedy about people getting together to celebrate a holiday about Christ being born. Okay.
Yeah, it's because it is so tangled up, like I mean people always make this point, and I'm always fascinated about that with like somebody like Richard Dawkins that would say like, yes, I'm culturally Christian because the culture, and I think Christmas is a part of that, right, is so tied up in those roots. You can't untangle it, you know, like people that try to untangle it, like you're making a mistake because it's ingrained. But yeah, I mean, and like Christmas just has that power, like that kind of like to elevate everything else. And like, yeah, like all these different Christmas movies, like especially those like Hallmark Christmas things, like those are always like a romance, but like it's not just like a typical romance, it's a Christmas romance, right? It's a different type. It's like a special romance, you know, like yeah. It's like something magical. I use that word, listeners, but like, you know, it doesn't have to be like magical. I think it's just something undeniable about that power that it has, like something that's bigger than life. It's bigger than the culture even. It's bigger. I mean, obviously it's like a subject of culture wars, like you were saying, like, yeah. And like the kind of war on Christmas, which is very true. Like, but it's like, I don't know. It's so much bigger than even that, you know, like it's one of those things where like you really, you couldn't take it out even if you tried, you know, you couldn't remove it or something from the culture. Like, you know, the Coca-Cola cans, the Christmas packaging products. I've said this before on the podcast. Like, I love it.
The polar bears, yeah.
The Santa Clauses.
But I mean, that's like, it's just one of those things. Like, you're like the fact that Christmas exists because like Christ was born. Like that's one of those intrinsic things that like I think the culture has like like been like blinded themselves to recently.
Yeah, like because it is kind of like maybe reverence, and again, like that doesn't quite capture it either, but it is kind of like a more reverent time. Like you said, donations, giving, even just the act of giving gifts. Like even people complain about it, like, oh, I got to go Christmas shopping, I got to buy gifts, and then sometimes that is a pain in the ass, right? Everybody's got busy lives, whatever. But it's also like the tradition at least forces you to give somebody something, you know, like at least like that's a good thing that it like forces you to give a gift and to like say something other than just hello to somebody, like Merry Christmas. Like
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh no. Okay, that's what I was gonna say. So
yeah,
you're
go.
talking about the Christmas miracle,
Yes.
and like the Christmas miracle is that there was this virgin birth. That's the Christmas miracle. It's not Santa Claus. Like it's not this fiction. Like no woman is like really loves these romantic comedies because like like Santa is involved or anything. And it's not just the romance. Like there's something specific about a Christmas romantic comedy that people like, and it's that there's a miracle involved. It's
Yes.
the Christmas miracle. And the miracle really is that virgin birth, but it just that's kind of gotten washed over.
Right.
Like, but that is what makes Christmas magical. And I mean, there's really no other reason. It's not Santa Claus, like giving gifts, because no one believes that. But there are people who do believe in the virgin birth, and there are people who just like, well, maybe they're skeptical of it, maybe they don't believe it, but they're willing to accept this in the spirit of Christmas and this romantic comedy that they watch. So I mean, I think yeah, that the Christmas miracle is like very important to like making a great Christmas film. And I mean, that's what Shop Around the Corner does have.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you said that too. The Christmas miracle. That's a good way to put it. Like Christmas magic, Christmas miracle. Yeah. The kind of special thing that can only happen around that time of year, right? Because it is this kind of like based around this like I guess that's why I said the word reverence, like reverent type of thing, and then it's extrapolated into other things too. But like, yeah, just something about Christmas that I always say, like maybe it was just because I had like a perfect childhood, like a great childhood where it was always great and stuff like that. But yeah, that's just so important to it. Yeah, and like shop around the corner, and I mean that really comes into play the Christmas miracle in It's a Wonderful Life. But yeah, all right. So the shop around the corner, yeah, man. I
What
mean,
well, I just had to ask you, what did you think of Mr. Marichek, the boss?
the I kept seeing the Great and Powerful Oz.
I know, yeah.
Yeah,
Frank Morgan, yeah,
yeah.
that's the actor. Yeah, yeah. That's always great because the Wizard of Oz is a great Christmas film too.
Oh yeah.
So that I always enjoy that connection that he was in Shop Around the Corner.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And like his voice, he's another one with I guess a lot of actors back then did. I remember like a lot of people that did voice work for Disney had a very distinct voice. Who is that guy? He's in Liberty Valance, the man who shot Liberty Valance. He plays like the kind of coward deputy,
Oh yeah, the one that
kind of fat guy.
Hale, was it Alan Hale?
Maybe, yeah.
Jim?
His
Alan Hale?
voice, he had kind of like that whistle to it.
Yeah, yeah. He was in like he did the voice for like the Robin Hood
Yes, the sheriff of
animated
Nottingham.
the sheriff. Yes, I think it was Alan Hale.
And
I'm
he
not
what
thinking
else
straight.
he did Fox and the Hound too, didn't he? He did
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
and he did a lot of Disney voice work that was just very sticks in my head. There's just all
Yeah.
those actors that just have that like distinct voice, but yeah, like Frank Morgan's just maybe because The Wizard of Oz is just the one that like I've seen 100 times. So
Okay.
like, I always just view him as that. But I mean, yeah, that the voice is very distinct. Yeah. But yeah, overview, like basically they have this that character, the Frank Morgan character is owns this shop, and he has, these employees that are like sales clerks for him and stuff, and they're trying to make like sales and give opinions on products and stuff that they're carrying in the store. Because I mean, I guess it was they do. There's a lot of reference to it being like kind of like the end of the Great Depression era. Like
Yeah.
a lot of characters just being like, because like there's always a threat of somebody losing their job,
Mhm.
and then they're all like, oh, and losing your job at a time like this, like and I guess this movie came out in 1940. It would be like right at the tail end.
Yeah, where the depression was probably like getting a little better, but people were still, yeah,
Yeah.
still struggling. Yeah.
So there's like this kind of like I guess it's really like the whole thing starts off where they're just kind of like in the store going, and you're meeting the characters that they're like waiting for the shop to open up, and there's just like talking about products they're going to sell, and the kind of the cigarette music box or
Yeah.
yeah yeah
Yeah. No, that was a good scene. The Margaret Sullivan, who plays that she's the lead actress.
Clara
Yeah, Clara. Yeah, she tries selling that music box to a lady. It was for cigarette. It's a cigarette music box, so you put your cigarettes in it, and you open it up and plays music. But this sort of let's just say larger set lady comes in and is looking at it, and Clara says, "Oh well, it's a candy box. You can put your candy in it, not cigarettes." And she's like, "Oh, it's great, and then she opens it up and it plays some weird Hungarian tune or something, and she hates it. Right? She hates the song.
Yeah, that's
and
the joke.
like,
Everybody hates the music that it plays. Like,
yeah, I meant to look up that music piece to see what the hell it was, like, or like if it was some political statement or something. I don't know. It seems weird. Yeah, they just hate some Hungarian folk song. And yeah, Claire's like, "Oh yeah, like if you actually, that's the great thing about it, is if every time you have to open it up to get candy, you have to hear that horrible song that'll keep you from eating less candy. Like you'll lose weight, right?" I just thought that was great. Like they were just telling a fat lady how to lose weight by like manipulating the cigar or the cigarette music box.
yeah, and then you learn that Jimmy Stewart and the Clara character are writing letters to somebody that they're in love with, but they've never met because they found an ad in the paper, like a one ad. Jimmy Stewart found a one ad in the paper where they wanted a friend to write to. It's like it kept thinking of like social media, like people posting that, like, yeah, like things to like get people to talk to them.
Yeah, no, it's
you just put that
it's
shit
like
in the
that.
paper.
Yeah, I mean, that's how it used to be. Yeah, you just like exchange rent. You have to like take, 15, 20 minutes to like write a letter to a woman just to get to know her, to see if, anything worked out. Yeah, that's how it was. It was crazy.
Yeah, and like eventually we learned that they're writing to each other, but they don't know it. Well, Jimmy Stewart learns it, but like still like this kind of like there's like Jimmy Stewart comes on screen and like he like you said, he has that presence about himself where he's just kind of so charming on screen. There's just like a warmness that radiates off of him and stuff. But that one line when he's like desperate for love, essentially, kind of like a sensitive young man type, like writing about poetry in these letters and things like that. But of course, not presenting himself that way in public and to other people.
Mm-hmm.
But there's that one scene where he's talking to like the older guy that works there, and he says something about how he just wants a lovely average girl.
Yeah.
A beautiful mid to
Yeah.
to call your own.
I mean, which is like, I don't know, like I'm kind of a connoisseur of like older Hollywood actresses. Margaret Sullivan, I mean, less than mid, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I don't know. Even though she was married to Henry Fonda and William Wyler.
Damn.
To the director. So I mean, I guess she. I mean, she didn't really have much work in Hollywood, so that I guess it's just kind of weird. She didn't have that much talent, I guess. And I don't know.
She just got the personality she got around.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know, but she did seem like for the part, just like the average Hungarian chick, right?
Yeah.
It seemed right for Jimmy Stewart.
Lovely average girl.
Yeah, they went together. It was a good casting call.
And the references to literature like Tolstoy and
Hmm.
all of that is just, you don't see that much anymore in anything, especially not a Christmas movie.
Yeah,
Uh,
she meets him by uh, placing a bookmark or carnation in Anna Karenina, I think,
right.
that she was reading. Yeah, yeah, very very nice. Yeah, I like that.
The carnations, that's how they're going to see each other. Yeah, that was
Yeah,
very, it's romantic. It is a romantic gesture, like a grand romantic gesture, the kind of taking
it
the leap.
is. Yeah, it is. Yeah, no, I love that about this film.
And I was
Very,
thinking like, no, yeah, go on, sorry.
oh no, that was it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I was thinking like the kind of, like, it's a small business, and like this, that you learn that the Jimmy Stewart character has been like working there for like 9 years, like since he was a teenager. Essentially, he like started out as like a little like kind of errand boy, and then like worked his way up to like be like a sales clerk. Uh, but like, he's like endeared to the owner, the Frank Morgan character, and he's like just kind of that relationship with the boss that I think is maybe it doesn't even exist anymore unless you work in like a small little like tech startup, or maybe like, yeah, a small family restaurant or something. But like, I don't even think it happens then, where you just
Yeah.
like, he was invited to his house for like dinner and stuff like that, like
Yeah, no, that was yeah, it just you don't really have that much anymore. It seems like you may go to the office party, like this Christmas party, but you don't, yeah, you're not going to dinners at your boss's house on the weekend anymore. So yeah, that was always like very quaint. Um, but his boss, I mean, one of the key storylines is that his boss thinks that Jimmy Stewart is sleeping with his wife,
right.
and he hires a private investigator. Turns out it's not Jimmy Stewart, but it's this like foppish gay guy that
Yeah, the
I mean,
dandy.
that's the only way I can describe the guy. Is like it just seems so gay, and I was like, "What? He's fucking your wife? Oh my god!" Like what? But yeah, that was I mean, that was like sort of one of the great things too. It was just like this, you know, the boss like learns that his like the employee that he trusted, treated like a son, right? Like made a very big deal about like, oh, we love having you over for dinner. Like he just suddenly turns on him because he suspects his wife is having an affair, and he just assumes it's Jimmy Stewart. But because I mean, you know, why wouldn't he? Why would the foppish gay guy fuck his wife? Like so
And he was the only one invited to their house too, like, and he was
yeah.
uh yeah, so he was like technically the only one that ever really met his wife in that capacity, so he like assumed that too. So the boss was playing favorites, like only inviting Jimmy Stewart for dinner.
Yeah.
But that's another theme I wanted to see. Like I saw in both of these films was the kind of like the kind of the male versus female. I said cliches in my notes, but this kind of like the dynamic, right? Like the kind of like, I don't know, like the kind of like the circle of romance, like the kind of and that includes the cliches and stereotypes, but kind of like, like these kind of romantic nods to like poetry, like romantic novels, romantic poems, kind of like the connection, like the thing, these little things that we call that are cliche now because we know, but like the romance, like between that little connection between men and women.
Mhm.
Like that's a huge part of these, and maybe it's just because the movies are so old, we don't really get real kind of like classic romance storylines like that anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was just like a huge theme that I kept seeing in both these movies, kind of. And I'm not even talking like on the level of like gender roles or something. Like, it's just kind of like the way that they interact in a romantic sense. Like, I don't know, like the roles that are fallen into or something.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's always anger turns to love, and then love turns to anger. There's always that dynamic that goes on. I mean, when Jimmy Stewart and Margaret Sullivan, when they first meet each other, like he was kind of trying to like get her a job, right? He kind of was a little sweet on her, and they got along. But then you flash forward like 6 months later, and you find out that they just hate each other. They can't stand each other at work, even though when they're writing to each other, it's like, and they don't know that, who each other are. Like when they're writing to each other, it's very romantic, but at work in person, they just can't get along. And it's that dynamic between men and women, like trying to find that common balance. And like, yeah, there's like those like genuine characteristics of like each gender that come out in full force, and you see that in The Shop Around the Corner. I mean, yeah, especially between Jimmy Stewart and Margaret Sullivan's characters.
Yeah, and you even see a variation. Sorry, yeah.
Oh no, like I mean, that's the whole tension between the film. It's like they hate each other, but they love each other,
Yeah.
right? Like, I mean, that's a great thing. It's like, yeah, love turns to hate, and then hate turns to love.
For sure. It's like and I was thinking even like the kind of dark side of that too, where they have the shop owner trying to kill himself
Oh
over
yeah,
his wife having an affair.
yeah. That was, I did not remember that really. Like that sort of shocked me. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I remembered it once I saw it, but I'm like, oh, I guess I put that out of my mind that the shop owner tried to kill himself, and yeah, the delivery boy had to like like stop him, and then he's in the hospital for that. Oh yeah, that's kind of, yeah, it's a very dark moment in the film.
That's another theme. It might have just been because it was the 40s, like coming out of the Great Depression and World War II era. Like both of them, like there's like characters that try to kill themselves in both of these movies.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, there's suicide in each movie. I know.
Yeah, kind of like yeah. One thing I wanted to ask you about too is like kind of like when the Jimmy Stewart character, when he finds out that he's writing to Clara, like why do you think he doesn't tell her? Like he kind of like keeps that to himself.
Yeah, because he knows before she does that she's the person that they're supposed to meet up, but they don't know each other, and Jimmy Stewart finds out it's her. I forget, he was supposed to wear a carnation, so he didn't and just pretended like he was just stopping by the restaurant that she was at or something, right?
Yeah, he finds out because he goes to the restaurant. He like spies through the window, and he sees her with the carnation in the Tolstoy, and he's like, oh no, it's her. But then like and that's like 30 minutes in or something. Like that's like, I don't know, I'm exaggerating with that. I mean,
Yeah,
it's only like
no,
100...
it's about that. Yeah. 30,
And
40.
yeah, and then he just kind of like keeps it to himself until the very end. And I don't know if it's kind of like maybe they were trying to play with the kind of like the suffering. Like, is it suffering more to know or to not know? Like when you have this kind of whimsical romance that only exists in the pages of letters up until that point. I don't know.
I mean, I think, well, from the writer's point of view, just like, well, you have to have something going on to keep the plot going, right? So, of course, he can't say anything. But, I mean, I think in real life, I mean, if they had been bickering that much in real life and he had just come out and told her, I don't know, she seemed very like easy to anger in a lot of the scenes. So yeah, maybe she wouldn't have reacted too well to it and just would have told him to fuck off and been angry, and then things would have been bad at work and it would have been not great for his love life. So maybe keeping quiet and quietly trying to work on her now that she was the one writing the letters would be a better idea.
Yeah, and like maybe Stewart like didn't want to admit it. That
Yeah,
like when he
yeah.
found out that that was who he was writing to and in love with.
Yeah, but I think he liked her originally because he tried to give her the job.
Yeah.
Whatever got them angry, it was, it's one of those things, again, love turns to hate. So, yeah, you just sort of like end up, you know, I don't know. There are certain situations, at least like, in my 20s, which I guess these people are in the movie, where I was just like, it was always like, I was kind of annoyed with the girl that I really liked. I mean, I don't know. Maybe that's just a me thing, but it tends to make sense. Like sometimes, like the ones you really like a lot, like you're a little annoyed by.
Yeah. Yeah, dude. Annoying ass women, dude. No,
Yeah.
yeah, and I kept thinking of maybe just because I was putting like projecting onto the film, but the idea of like, yeah, like when you're writing these letters anonymously, like you'd think they would tell each other their names at some point, but they don't, right? Like,
Mm-hmm. Well, they probably, I don't know. I assume they may use like some sort of a
pen
yeah.
name, or yeah. But yeah, I mean, it just kept making me think of like the online thing, where like the kind of the way you portray yourself online or in a letter or something like that is like you have more control over the kind of reactions and things. I don't know. It's always kind of differently than the way people act in real life and all that. It's just kind of like the letter writing relationship is almost like the best version that you want to put out there, or even just your guard is down a little bit more.
Yeah. No, I think the letter writing is the best version because you're actually thinking through about what you're going to say, and you can also erase it, write a new letter, start over. Like you're really having deeper thoughts.
The sensitive young man Jimmy Stewart, like quoting poetry and novels and things in the letters, but he never does it at work.
Yeah.
So she never makes the connection. Like, kind of, he keeps that side of himself. I mean, whatever. Like, you don't have to do everything at work. Like, yeah, like my boss talking about fucking cat shit
Yeah.
in a meeting.
Yeah.
But
Nah, there's something you can just keep left in your private life, I guess. Yeah.
but it was just like, yeah, like a very sensitive young man kind of script in that sense. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Very old Hollywood ending too. I was thinking kind of how glamorous it was at the end, where like they kind of, when they find out, like, well, Jimmy Stewart tells her eventually that it was him, and it's Christmas Eve, and they're at the shop and they're closing up by themselves, and then it just ends with like, a very like passionate romantic kiss, like very old Hollywood.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
to understand that you could end it on that thing, like we didn't have to have like this, like epilogue or something where like we see 5 years later or something like.
Yeah, no, I'm glad they didn't do that. I mean,
Yeah.
you just they kiss, they get married, they have children, they die like an old age together, and that's it. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that's what you imagine. That's like kind of what you want to imagine from Christmas films. I mean, that really is kind of what happens in like the newer like Hallmark Christmas movies.
Yeah.
Like it's always like, oh, they, something bad happened, they got in a fight. They lost touch and now they're back together, whatever happened, but now they kiss, they're going home together and happily ever after. That's what you want.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
And then less is more in terms of that too, like just seeing them embrace and kiss, it's like, okay, now the movie's over. Like that was the whole leading up to moment. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't need the story of their life after that. Like,
exactly,
I just need that they got together. Yeah.
It's quick. I mean, it's good, efficient writing. Yeah, and understanding the importance of that too. Like their first kiss essentially is what ends the story.
Yeah. And yeah, no, it was it's a great movie. Um, nothing wasted really. Like, I mean, it was almost, what was it? Like almost 2 hours?
I think it was like an hour, 139 minutes. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, yeah. And still, like, nothing wasted. Like everything uh,
Or maybe
was,
that that's 1 hour and 39 minutes, which isn't 100,
yeah,
139.
yeah,
Yeah.
a little over an hour and a half.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. Sorry, that was like 139 minutes. Like what? That's
yes.
like 2.5 hours. Like,
But I mean, it got right to the point. And there were like always a lot of like each character was entertaining, even like Pepe the delivery boy, who like had a pretty big story arc in
yeah.
there. He was entertaining. Um, yeah, Mr. Marchek, the boss, was great, and yeah, like just a really good wholesome film for Christmas.
Yeah, and I forgot about the Christmas bonus checks. Yeah, like they get handed their bonus checks. Like the movie ends basically, and like yeah, that very old Hollywood. Like they have the best sales day of their like
Yeah.
lifetime of the shop. That
Since before the Depression, yeah.
Yeah.
I think he said since 28, which was the year before the Depression. So yeah.
And they get handed their bonus checks by the boss, who's had like a new lease on life and is like very jolly and happy, very Ebenezer Scrooge post Ghosts, and then yeah, then they find out that actually they're madly in love with each other and they've been right in front of each other the whole time, and they kiss, and like it's literally like it couldn't be any more positive. Like without laying it on too thick, because it's not like it's subtle. I mean, they make a deal out of like handing out the bonus checks, but like that is like good. I think there might be like a really kind of good screenwriting line, like one little line of dialogue in the earlier part of the film of like how good it feels to get a bonus check put in your hand. Which is just very tight script writing.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Bonus checks feel great.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Little bonus.
Couple. Yeah. No, they feel great. But yeah, it's also just like that whole thing is like they were right in front of each other the whole time, and they didn't know it. And it's one of those kind of going back to like kind of like the Christian angle of the film is like God is like putting people together for a reason, and it's the person's job to see it, right? And the shop around the corner is them finally being able to actually like see that they're supposed to be together because they were put together. It's just kind of this whole, again, I guess you could separate it from God, but I think it really comes down to, again, that like Christmas miracle, the magic of everything, how everything is kind of just magical and coordinated by some other power, right? And I think that's what like combines like to make the best Christmas films.
Yeah, that's another theme. The not seeing what's right in front of you. That's always like a Christmas theme in most of these, right? Like what was right under your nose was what you always wanted, essentially.
Yeah. Taken for granted.
Yeah.
What's been provided for you, right? You've been given gifts, but you don't see them as such, and so you're taking them for granted, but you actually have to appreciate what you have.
Yeah, absolutely. Final thoughts on Shop Around the Corner?
I think it's a film that I haven't really seen in discussion about Christmas films until like maybe the past couple years. So I do hope people keep talking about it and watching it. I mean, I think it's a great one to watch during Christmas. It really has that Christmas spirit, even though it isn't like overtly Christmassy until the very end, but it has the Christmas spirit throughout it.
Yeah, that's one thing. Like I was thinking about, because whenever I would do like this Christmas special, I like to combine it. So I'll throw some classics and then some modern in there, at least one modern, like newer Christmas movie.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I mean, we didn't this time, listeners. But like, yeah, next year. But I was just thinking like mainly because the new ones that were coming out this year look like shit. Like they look really bad.
Yeah,
The
I mean,
Red One and Dear Santa and
oh, yeah, I haven't seen any of those.
I haven't either, but they're on my list to like look at. Like I love Christmas movies, so I'm probably gonna watch them at some point during this holiday season. But yeah, they just looked bad, and they're always about Santa. Like it's always like a fantasy sci-fi thing now. You know, it's not like, I mean, yeah, there's those Hallmark ones are like the only ones that really exist. If you're talking about like traditional romance stories around Christmas, like all the big ones that are like popular and stuff, like they're always around like some fantasy. I was thinking like I reviewed this last year, the kind of Silent Night or whatever, or
The
what?
horror film?
No, the oh wow, what was the name of it with that fucking guy from the Stranger Things who plays Santa Claus? Violent Night. That's what it's called.
Oh, I did not see that.
It was just bad because
I
it
mean,
makes Santa Claus violent now. Like I
yeah,
don't know. It's always just like a sci-fi thing. Yeah.
I think for some of those films, they come up with the title before they come up with like the story. So they're like, Silent Night. How about Violent Night? Okay. Like let's make it a crazy Santa Claus. Like, I think that the title hits a little bit harder than the films do.
Yeah.
On some of those things. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. All right, well, let's hit It's a Wonderful Life. Let's get a refills real quick.
Okay, yeah.
Quick
Yeah.
five.
I gotta use the restroom too.
Yeah, we'll be right back.
Hey, what's up?
What's up, man? Damn, dude. Good ass Christmas stuff already.
Yeah.
It's a Wonderful Life is, this is the one that I had seen before. I watch all the time, and I've talked about on the podcast all the time. But what's your history with It's a Wonderful Life? And kind of like how, you view the movie, all of that.
Well, it was one of those movies that, like, when I was young, it was shown on TV all the time when I was a kid. So, like, I pretty much saw glimpses of it every year, right? Like, parts of it. Like, it was shown all the time from the beginning of December till Christmas.
Yeah.
And then I remember, like, a little later on, for some reason, it was never shown then. Like, it was shown on Christmas Day on, like, one station, and that was it, because there was some sort of, like, a backlash to it being shown all the time. People were sick of it.
Yeah.
For some reason. But they weren't. People weren't sick of it. Like, it was just some made-up thing to get the Christmas Story or something to be, like, the new holiday classic. Which they show, like, 24/7 on every cable network now. But recently I've been glad that they've kind of, like, brought It's a Wonderful Life back to being shown, like, all the time. And you can get it anywhere anyway now, like streaming services. But I have been seeing, like, more advertisements for, like, some cable networks and TV networks, like, showing it more often. But it was always a film that I liked when I was a kid. Like, every year I appreciate it more. It's one of those things that I appreciate more as I get older. So, like, I liked it more in my 20s and then, like, more in my 30s. And, like, now I'm like, okay, well, it's like, this is really one of the true American classics. It's something that, like, I don't like. Okay, I heard there was a remake of it like last year.
Ugh.
I haven't really
I didn't even
investigated
know about
this.
that. Damn, that's
Yeah,
disgusting.
I looked it up. Yeah, I know. It was probably awful. But it's one of those things that really hasn't been attempted to, like, they're not going to remake it. Like, you don't remake Citizen Kane, you don't
Right.
remake Casablanca, they're not going to remake Gone with the Wind. Like, they won't remake It's a Wonderful Life. It's perfect as it is. And unlike Citizen Kane or Casablanca, like, you watch It's a Wonderful Life every year because it's a Christmas film. Like, Christmas films are one of those things that, like, you can watch every year, whereas, like, some of these, like, great films ever made, like, people watch them like every few years maybe or something. Like, so It's a Wonderful Life was like, it is really one of the greatest American films because we watch it like every year. Most Americans will see it, they'll catch a glimpse of it, they'll hear about it every year during Christmas time. You don't, Citizen Kane, Casablanca, Gone with the Wind, not the same thing.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. It's ingrained into the culture too. Like, even if you've never seen it before, you know of it and you know the story. It's one of those, like, that, yeah, bigger than life, bigger than humanity. It's like a huge part of the world.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny you say that too, with the kind of, like, it was hard to find for a while. Like, I think I was talking to my wife and we were, sitting around end of the day, like, kind of before bed, or like, oh, let's watch something Christmassy, like a Christmas movie or something. And dude, like, I subscribe to, like, almost all the streamers, like, there's a few that I don't, but pretty much all of them, because they make you to, like, get certain shows now.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't help but think, I kept talking to my wife, like, being like, man, they're being really stingy with the Christmas stuff this year. Like, some of these streamers are being super stingy. Like, for example, like when you said you couldn't find it, like, I feel like that's what they're doing right now with the Rankin and Bass claymation stuff. Like,
Oh yeah.
like
Mhm.
it's so hard to find that shit. Like, and it is like, AMC plays some, but they play like Rudolph 2 or whatever. Like, they don't play like the
Yeah.
really good ones that everybody wants every year.
Yeah.
Like the original Rudolph and stuff, or Santa Claus is Coming to Town and stuff, like those really good, like, classic claymations from Rankin and Bass.
Yeah, and they show those every year, like when I was a
Yeah,
kid.
exactly.
Yeah.
They would be like on all the time on, like, ABC
Yeah.
Family and stuff like that. And I'm just like, you think that these streamers would be clamoring for the rights to stream those during the holiday season. And there
Yeah.
feels like they're just not. Like, I think that they're only available on, like, Apple Plus or something, like Apple TV. So I guess Apple just owns it now and, like, doesn't let anybody else license it. And I was just like, damn, like, I'm gonna have to buy the Blu-ray where they have, like, it's like $50, but, like, I guess it's worth it just to buy the Blu-ray,
Mhm.
like, where they have all of them, like,
Like everything. Yeah.
yeah. And a lot of them aren't that good. Like, I've seen all of them, but, like, a lot of them, there was a reason we only talk about, like, the 5 or 6 that were, like, the classics,
Mhm.
the Little Drummer Boy, yeah, the Rudolph, the Santa Claus is Coming to Town, uh, I always confuse a couple of them, but
Is it no? There was like a Yes Virginia. There is no Santa Claus. Is that
the year without a Santa Claus,
Oh,
or there might be,
I don't know. Uh, but I mean, there were so many. Like,
yeah.
I mean,
I
there
think
were
they
so
made like
many.
18. They did it for like 18 years, and they would be like made for TV every holiday season.
Yeah, I
And
mean, but they would be shown all the time.
yeah, every year they would be like playing. You
Mhm.
could catch them on TV, just like It's a Wonderful Life. You could catch it somewhere. But yeah, and then and I remember, yeah, It's a Wonderful Life was hard to find for a while. And I remember even like a few years ago looking for it around Christmas time. I was like, where is it? I had to like rent it off of Amazon, like, for like the $3 or whatever. I was like, Jesus, who owns the rights to this? It's an MGM like movie, so right, like
Because I mean, the thing is like it was played like from I don't know, I think from the 60s to the 90s. It was played for like
right.
decades at Christmas time, and everyone was like, "Oh, well, people have gotten sick of this. Everyone knows what it is." And then you just let like 10 years pass, and people are like, "I don't know what this is. What is this?" Like, I mean, and that's the thing with like some of the Rakin and Bass stuff, where it was like they should just put them out now and just tell kids that they're like, "Oh, this is the new Christmas stuff." Like this was made years ago, and I think kids would like it. I think the only reason they may not like it now is because if you tell them it's old, they're gonna view it as old and not like it. But it's way better than all the new Christmas shit they're getting now. You know, like whatever animated stuff they're into.
Yeah, dude. I watched a few of the Netflix Christmas ones that they've made, you know, in like the last 10 years or whatever. The one where Kurt Russell plays Santa Claus. Did you see any of those by chance?
No, I didn't see that. I saw the
it's
the
so bad.
ones.
Yeah, it's so bad. But like, yeah, and you're right, because It's a Wonderful Life is this kind of thing. It's one of those movies that is so big, people will say they don't like it or that they hate it because it's so popular and so beloved and so American, like such an American cultural iconic, like such a piece of American culture that it, like you get like fake like clout or like art cred for like saying, "Oh, I don't like it," you know.
Yeah.
Which is bullshit, and anybody who says that just has terrible taste. Like they have no idea.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, it's a classic for a reason. The reason that it was playing on televisions every Christmas for 30, 40 years, and even now, is because it's a classic. It's timeless. Everyone loves it.
Yeah. And
that's the reason.
I was thinking too, like kind of how, because I mean, I bring it up all the time, like, and I, like even when it's not Christmas time, like it's always in my head. And I was thinking, watching it this time, like you said, every year you watch it, every time you watch it, you know, as you age too, it just gets better and better and kind of more meaningful.
Yeah.
And like, I was realizing watching this last night, like preparing for it, and you know, kind of really taking notes on it for the first time, like watching it, you know, to prepare for this. I was like, I hadn't realized how much of my life, how much of my worldview was shaped by this fucking movie. Like a piece of American cinema, this iconic piece of Christmas and American cinema. You know, it has probably one of the most iconic American actor ever, Jimmy Stewart, in it. It is maybe one of the most famous things ever around the world. It's mentioned in almost every Christmas movie that's come after it. Or at least modeled after it, you know. And I mean, and I talked a little bit about this on the podcast previously with like A Christmas Carol and stuff, because that is another story like this, you know. Yeah. Like at least at that level of like influence and in everybody's head all the time. I was just thinking, yeah, like, because my experience with this was, this is why it was our parents' favorite movie, like, or one of our usually people out there will say like their parent, one of your parents probably is like, oh, this is my favorite. Because it was on TV all the time, particularly for the boomers growing up. Because by the time the boomers were seeing it on TV all the time, like in the kind of into the 50s and 60s, it was kind of an older movie at that point, you know, like 20 years old, and like they would put it on there. But because this was one of my mother's favorites. It was this and Miracle on 34th Street. And I mentioned that last year in the Christmas special, listeners, but like, so this was another one that like, I was forced to watch as a kid, that like I didn't really quite understand it, and it was black and white, and you know, you're kind of bored by it. You don't quite understand what's happening, and yeah. So this one has just always been like an icon. And then it's like, and as a teenager, I think I finally kind of understood it. You know, being forced to watch it one year with my mom, and yeah, I was just thinking about like how much this movie has just influenced my thinking, and not just like I mean, what it is to be a good person or appreciative and stuff, like how much it's influenced that in my life, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, the film is like all about like appreciating what you have. Like, so George Bailey always wanted to be, he wanted to travel the world. He wanted to do all sorts of things, but he ended up just being a business and loan guy in his own town, right? Like helping out the people in his own town to, build houses, right? Build life for themselves, which is a good thing. And it's really honorable.
Yeah.
And it gets down to that basic thing where it's like, look, not everyone's going to be a millionaire. And this was in the time in the 40s where everyone, everyone wanted to be like, everyone wants to be rich and successful and have a huge house and, private plane, like vacation home, all that stuff. But look, really, if you just end up being able to afford a home, raise a family, have a decent, honest job in a small town, that is a wonderful life, because a lot of people don't even live that, right? We look up to people who live like just this grandiose lifestyle.
Right.
And I mean, no shade to them. If you work hard for it, you can get that. Great. But it shouldn't make you think you failed because you didn't become like to that level of success, that rich, right? Like if you just help the people that you're around and you develop friends, community, a family, that is a wonderful life. And that's exactly what this film hits at.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think it's 100%, dude. It's I'm thinking of it now when you saying that, like it almost inverts the American dream in a positive way, like in a really positive way. And I get like, think it was this post World War II, like I mean, that's a huge deal too, because it's interesting that we had these movies the way they lined up. Like one was pre-World War II, at least World War II was going on, but America wasn't in it yet. So it really hadn't touched America yet, at that time. And I mean, I'm no historian or whatever, or history buff, but I know a little bit. I know that much.
Yeah.
And and then when this was post, right? So like the rationing had stopped. Like there was like everybody kind of could take a breath for a minute. There was more positivity, and kind of the American Empire was starting. Like the American Empire was taking over the entire world. In the beginning stages of that, at least, and then everybody knows the story in kind of the 50s and all of that. Partly because of World War II, because we were so isolated from it, all the other nations were kind of devastated by it, and we could just keep growing and take over the whole world. Yeah, man, I just think of how like it inverts the American dream in that way. But like, I was just thinking of like how American this story is, like, and people, a lot of our listeners already know this, but for those that don't, we just go through the motions, I guess. Directed by Frank Capra, who, I mean, and Eric and I kind of, we get dinner pretty regularly out here in Vegas and like talk about this type of shit. We both love Frank Capra, like one of the best American directors.
Absolutely.
Just everything he touches is pretty good out there, listeners. And based on a short story by, I didn't look up the story, but I was looking this name. I was like, is this like a German story or something? It was like Philip Van Doren Stern. Philip Van Doren Stern is the name of the guy who wrote the short story. And I don't know how old that short story is either. So I don't know how much was adapted and how much was taken for it, but at least says it's based on a story by it. I don't know if it's of the same name or not either. I should have looked it up for a fucking writing podcast, but whatever. But yeah, it's kind of like George Bailey and I bring this is another reason maybe it sticks with me so much. George Bailey is a sensitive young man in a lot of ways, in terms of this kind of like, he has dreams, right? He's a young American man that has these huge ambitions, like, and he's desperate for them. He's incredibly desperate for these huge ambitions. He wants adventure, and I mean, we're going to get to this too, but I mean, there are direct references to Tom Sawyer in this all over the place, and you know, including like the angel Clarence carrying the fucking copy of the novel with him.
Yeah,
but like it just. And I mean, that's an iconic American story too. Like that, people. I think that's another reason people try to bash this movie, and not just because it gives you kind of like art cred for being a snob or whatever. If you say you don't like this really popular, beloved American iconic cultural item, but to say it's like you know, they try to bash it because they're trying to denigrate America too. Like these American cultural items. If you denigrate these cultural totems, you know, you're denigrating the American way of life, or like the American arrogance, or like the dream, or whatever, you know, they would want to call it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I was thinking themes, and I mean, we can approach this so many fucking ways, dude. I mean, it's like oh, I forgot to mention screenwriters. There's a lot of screenwriters for this too, by the way. Did you notice that?
Oh no, I didn't.
Yeah, there's
really,
there's three
revisions. Wow.
3 credited writers. Frank Capra's one of them, so I'm sure that's kind of the typical kind of director rewriting scenes to fit, you know?
Yeah.
I wrote these down. Sorry, these are just for the writer nerds. Albert Hackett is a credited writer, and Francis Goodrich.
He's pretty...
What?
Yeah, Albert Hackett's done a lot of stuff. And
Yeah.
Goodrich, yeah. No, they're both like very accomplished writers. It looks like.
And then it also says additional scenes by Joe. I can't read my own writing. Joe Swirling. And I was like, additional scenes by. I've never seen that in a movie before, but of course it was all different back then. I mean, I'm not like a.
I mean, I think we'd have to like read the story, the short story, and see
Right.
what's added. And his may have
We should
been.
have, dude. Damn. Yeah.
Yeah.
Next year.
Yeah, I had no idea it was a short story. I knew Shop Around the Corner was a play, but yeah, no, I didn't know this was a short story.
Yeah, and I wonder how loosely based on it is or not, you know. But yeah, I was thinking themes, like kind of actions versus consequences, or even like cause and effect, you could say, if we wanted to broaden it even further. But I think actions and the consequences of actions, desire, sacrifice. And it just, George Bailey is this kind of hopeless romantic in a sense, right? Like he wants this romantic American life of adventure, of traveling everywhere, of seeing the world and taking it all in, you know?
Yeah.
And it just, I think that is such a universal thing, particularly, I mean, everybody probably feels this, but I mean, I think particularly for American life, because it's obtainable, maybe. It's always been kind of obtainable in America in some way, particularly 20th century America, and, you know, till through today and all of that. But like, it was just like, that's a fire that burns inside of I'm going to say young man, every young man that walks this fucking earth. Okay. Like, did the fire that burns inside of George Bailey for that kind of romantic, adventurous life, you know?
I mean, I hope so.
Yeah.
I honestly, like, I've, you know, like, I deal with young men every day. And, they seem to want to just stay at home with their phones.
Oh,
But, yeah. So, but, I mean, really, I think there is, like, that yearning desire. It's just, I think people are distracted by their phones nowadays. So that's a whole different conversation. I do think the underlying theme of, like, a yearning desire to just, like, you know, like, see a bunch of places, meet a bunch of people, do things that are different, like, do, like, adventurous things, like, kind of.
He mentions having 4 wives. Like,
Yeah.
he's, I want to have 4 different wives. Like, I want to live like a king by, you know, climbing mountains and stuff. And it's a romantic way of viewing life. I think it's very romantic, and I keep saying American, but particularly American romance. Like, it's an American romantic way to view life, whereas it isn't. I was gonna say it isn't duty, but that's not true either, because then it becomes about duty very quickly.
Yeah, no, I mean, once you have a child, yeah,
Right.
yeah, definitely
And I
comes
was,
back. Yeah,
and in the very first scene, George Bailey is portrayed as heroic. You know, like obviously they start with the angels and all that, and those little balls of light in the sky.
which I love.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that's just like, I mean, that's just something that very different that you don't see in a lot of films of that era, where it's just like, they'll have like, they'll kind of represent God in the sky as
Right.
these this, it's like God, and he's talking to like Joseph or whoever, like
Yeah.
some other angel, and Clarence is the one that like, oh, I want to get my wings, so I have this mission
He's the
to do on Earth. Yeah.
angel that hasn't been promoted yet, and
Yeah, which in like, and once you see Clarence, he's a sweet old guy, and you're like, oh, I want him to get promoted. Like,
yeah,
so please, like, have him help George. But that whole scenario doesn't come until like the last half hour of the film, which
right,
I always forget every single time,
right,
because most of the film for me is just like, I really remember that last half hour.
yes,
Like, I mean, I know about the rest, yeah, but like really what strikes me is that last half hour. So the film seems so much shorter to me in my mind when it's like about 2.5 hours or so. And yeah, 2 hours is dedicated to like the life before he's on the bridge wanting to kill himself, and then half hour is dedicated to after that.
and the way it's portrayed, like kind of like the like, it's such a brilliant move on Capra's part, where like we start with this big kind of blank vastness, like with the start, and you hear the prayers, like you hear the people praying for George Bailey, and it kind of, they echo over one another, and they start crowding into one another, and you just see these balls of light. And this is where like, less is more, that kind of thing. Like, instead of showing these elaborate angels or like a heaven scene or something, just these little balls of light, like stars in the sky,
Yeah.
And it's black and white too, so like you can only tell that they're talking because they kind of light up, brilliant directing to get that across, and then you get it quickly. And like you said, like, it's so, I mean, it's an over 2 hour movie. It's like a 2 hour, 20-minute movie. And the last half hour, like you said, is the most memorable part. But like, for it being 2.5 hours, like 2 hours, 20 minutes, it moves. Like, I don't think there's a single moment of lag, like, in the entire story.
I don't know, because it's like, it goes from like, oh, like, this is great, to like, oh, this is horrible. This is great again. This is horrible. Like,
Yeah.
it's just like the ups and downs of George Bailey's life. And it sort of like, that really is the best background for this film, because ultimately I think what it's trying to say is like, look, you've had ups and downs your entire life. Everyone does. Things go great, things go horrible, things go great again, they're horrible. And then George Bailey finds himself in this horrible swing, and he's like, this is too horrible. This is it. I can't do this anymore. And the point of the angel coming down is like, all right, I know this is like the worst it's ever been, but like, trust me, you can appreciate things in your life, and things will be better than they are. Things change. And I mean, that again, it's part of the Christmas spirit,
Yeah.
Like, there's always something new. Again, it's like, Christmas is near the new year, like, things change, like, you can change.
And yeah, I mean, right, it's, unapologetically Christian immediately too, with this kind of like, because we have angels and God and then prayers and all that literally in the first few seconds of the film. Like, it's good, and which I think is another, it's very American in that way too, to not even, it's not like it's like rubbed all over your face. It's not like George Bailey is this like devout religious guy. At least that's not portrayed. Maybe it's more implied, but it's like it's very American to approach it in that way. Like I kept thinking like this is an American story. Like it could only be an American story, and I'm like, hell yeah, it is. Like like.
I mean, especially I love like like they had a Christmas party I think at the business and loan place that he worked that George Bailey managed, and like there was just like a couple guys that were just like just out of their mind drunk, and like it was just like pictured as like very quaint, like, oh, you're like so hammered, just like take a walk home, like, and
Uncle
you
Billy,
have to steer them in the right direction, and then there's people flirting with each other. It's just kind of that like very quaint American town, like, I mean, much like the shop around the corner, even though it was in Hungary, but it was kind of that same
Basically
like
American,
small town
yeah.
feel. Yeah, like everyone knew each other's business. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's also, I mean, this is credit to the writing. And I mean, it is so tight. Everything that you see on screen, everything that's mentioned, every character that's introduced matters. There isn't anything that like, oh, just comes in and then leaves. It like, no, it matters to the story. Every little visual cue, every little thing. Like, I mean, like I said, I mean, George is already portrayed as a hero. Like in the very beginning when we meet him when he's like, 10 years old or whatever, 12 years old. Or I guess he's like 4 years older than his brother, and his brother's 9. So he's like 13 or something, 12.
Yeah.
And his brother falls through the ice, right? And then he jumps into the freezing cold waters. They imply that it's like Connecticut or something, right? Like...
it seems like
Massachusetts or
so there was that one point someone was like, why don't you drive, like towards the end I think it was like, why don't you drive down to Florida with us,
right? And I think there's like reference to going to New York and stuff, like taking the train to New York.
So I'm thinking maybe like Connecticut, Virginia, maybe. Yeah, like
The
not,
American Northeast basically, like.
Yeah, because like I'm thinking like to drive down to Florida, like I don't know, it's a long ways. Like
Yeah,
I don't know. So you'd have to have a. Like, I don't know what people really did back then. I don't know. Maybe like it's just hard for me to imagine it take like a car like that down to Florida. That would take like a few days. I don't know. Maybe they did that, but yeah, somewhere on the East Coast probably. I would think Virginia. That's where I'm imagining it takes place.
that and like so George is a hero right away. He saves his brother in the ice, and because of that he gets a terrible ear infection, loses hearing in his left ear, like hasn't been able to hear out of it since he was 13 or whatever, 12. And just like already he's this hero who's sacrificing parts of himself for his family, like, and he's portrayed in a way like he's not even thinking about it, like he just does it because his brother was in trouble. Like he's a hero. And I mean that too. I was gonna ask you this, like this is a movie where if you don't cry at this movie at some point, you're probably a psychopath,
Yeah.
And I've always been kind of more prone to that in movies and stuff. I don't know why, but like, I mean, I was crying. Like, when did you cry? When did you normally cry at this movie? Like, when does that happen?
So there were 2 points. When he noticed that the druggist that like almost poisoned. Yes. Okay. So when he told the druggist like I didn't deliver him because like I noticed they were the wrong prescription, you would have poisoned him, and like he thought he was gonna be mad at him, but like the druggist ended up like being like, oh, thank you, like, and like that. And then also the next time was when that druggist reappeared as like the homeless person.
Oh, you're right.
That like you found out that without George being born, he would have poisoned the kid, and been sent to jail and you've been a bum, right?
Yeah.
His whole life would have gone wrong. So that was the second time I cried. Then the last time was at the end,
Yeah.
like just the whole scene. The angels get their wings, they're pouring the money out on the table, like that whole scene is just
Oh yeah.
I do cry easily at movies. I
Yeah.
will hold it back. Mostly I'm pretty good about that if I'm around other people, but if I'm by myself, I'll just fucking I'll I'll let it
Absolutely.
go. And those are the 3 points, I think.
Yeah. We have overlap in that too. There were 4 times this watch. Usually it's at least twice or something. Yeah. But this watch, as you said, every time I get older and I watch it again and it becomes kind of more meaningful and more is revealed and all
That's
of
true.
that.
I probably didn't cry the first time I saw it.
Right.
I was just like, whatever. I'm a kid. Like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And it's just as you get older, it's like, it's so much worse. Like, or better, Yeah.
And that scene with Mr. Gower in the drugstore, like it creates such sympathy for George while also making him a hero again, kind of like when he realizes it, because and again, it's such good writing, that tight visual cue. He sees the letter, you get the letter flash up on screen. Mr. Gower's son had just been killed, or he died of pneumonia or whatever.
Yeah.
And so he just gets this news. He's been drinking, like he's out of it. Like he just found out his son died, and he puts the poison in those capsules for another little girl, for a little girl in the neighborhood. And then has George deliver it. And like when he goes to his father, right? Cause he's like, he knows that he put something bad in those capsules and he like doesn't know what to do. So he runs to his father's office at the building and loan to ask his dad, but his dad's like in the middle of like a tough negotiation with the villain of the story, Mr. Potter.
Yeah.
And he doesn't have time for
like-
him. And then he comes back, and then that Mr. Gower gets the call that the medicine never showed up, and he's drunk. He'd been drinking, and he just starts beating him, for like being insolent. And when he's hitting him, and his sore ear that he can't hear out of because that ear infection starts bleeding. And dude, that was the first moment for me as well, with this kind of oh god, it's starting already.
It was that was a tough scene.
Yeah.
Like it was. I'm always shocked that they included it in there. It's sort of like the suicide in Shop Around the Corner. I was just like, I was just like, that's a heavy scene. Like, I used to work at a drugstore. Could you imagine I could imagine the pharmacist beating me or something.
Yeah.
It's just crazy. So it's just. That scene, it was just he was saving a child's life, and he was also saving the pharmacist's life. He had sympathy for the pharmacist who Mr. Palmer, who just lost a child,
Right.
and he also prevented the death of a child. It just kind of established George as just this very straight and narrow, altruistic guy.
Yeah, he was doing the right thing and he was getting beaten for it. Which I guess is a theme in the movie, right? He's always even reluctantly, he's doing the right thing and getting punished for it, usually.
Yeah.
In some way, yeah. But that scene, and then I always I've been in recent years, I didn't used to when I was younger, but recent years, I cry during the scene when he calls on Mary, when he goes to her house,
Mm-hmm.
and they're on the phone with with their friend Sam or whatever, and they're basically the first time that they kiss. There's that. The scene when he loses everything and he comes back to the house with all the kids, that gets me every time. And then the ending as well, dude. Yeah, that is
Yeah.
the ending is to my brother George, the richest man in the world.
it's
Oof.
just one of those endings that like I don't. Every time it's just like wh- I've seen this so many times.
Mm-hmm.
I know how it's going to end. It's not even like that emotional of a scene, like compared to like some other things where people are weeping. It was just like people smiling and like
Right.
rejoicing.
It's like
Like,
happy.
yeah, it's just people being happy. And like, but I just like start weeping the most at the end. That's the one that I always like, yeah, the most at the end. Never think I will, but yeah, I do. And I
Oh
did
yeah.
this time, the last time I watched. So yeah, it was, man,
Yeah, because
it's, it was such a perfect movie.
yeah, and it earns that ending so hard. I think that's why it has that emotional impact. Like it earns that ending so hard, like that it just hit
Yeah.
overwhelms you with the kind of, and yeah, it's like a joyous scene even. And I think that has something to do with how Jimmy Stewart plays it too at that time.
Yeah.
That scene where he's yeah, obviously he's overwhelmed and happy, but like he's I don't know, he just plays it well with that too. Uh,
There was one like I love the scene. Like, of course, it's very famous where he's like, I'm gonna lasso the moon,
yes,
right? And
yeah,
I'm gonna bring it in, right? And like, I mean, I love how that just describes like, his passion for like trying to get outside of his own world, like, and like if he couldn't go outside of his small town, he's going to bring it into him, right? He's going to make it meaningful. And I think that kind of matches up to the end, whereas like he ends up making his small, like this life in his small town meaningful to him, right? You
yeah.
lasso, you bring it into you, right? Um, and also just going off of that thing where, so uh, Mary remembers that he talked about last sowing the moon, and when he calls on her later on, when they're kind of like, I guess they broke up.
It moves very quickly. She went away to college for 4 years, and he was stuck running the building alone because she's like his brother's age. She's like 4 years younger than him or
Uh,
something.
all right,
Uh,
so he was just gonna like see her again to see what was up,
yeah,
and but he had this like painting that she made or some drawing of him like lassoing the moon, and like when he walks in, he just looks at it and is like, ah, okay. And just like just totally snubs her, and that was like kind of like, again, with Jimmy Stewart, like he's so like innocent, you have to like outwardly portray his like faults, and the fact that he was just like treating her so rudely, like when he met up with her again, was just like one of those things that was like, okay, I mean, I guess that's like, that's one of your faults.
yeah, and he. I mean, yeah, it's such a great scene. I mean, again, that's one of the scenes that makes me tear up every time now that I'm older with the kind of not just that iconic scene, but a kind of like he's almost resentful in that scene because his brother just comes in from college, uh, and being like an all-American football star and stuff at college, and like he finds out kind of a few scenes before that when his brother comes home with his new wife
Mhm.
that he's not going on his trip, right? Like because his brother just got a job offer somewhere else, and like
Mhm.
he's asking the wife, he's like, "Is it a good job?" Because he has to like all of a sudden it's come over him that he can't make his brother give up this job offer so that he could go to college. And so he views as like everybody's telling him to call on Mary, and like he views that as like settling or something, or like resents that he like everybody's telling him to go call on Mary, uh,
Mhm.
and he's like purposely trying to belittle that kind of romantic connection that they had 4 years earlier at that dance. Another huge iconic scene when they fall in the pool and shit.
Oh yeah,
But
yeah.
like you were saying that scene with the moon, right? Like that is the one of the most iconic. And it's so romantic. It's so romantic. It's achingly romantic, right? Like kind of, what do you want, Mary? You want the
Mhm.
moon? Just say the word. I'll throw a lasso around it. Pull it down. Like,
Yeah,
like it
it's
just,
so romantic. It's just
yeah,
it really is just whatever you want, girl, I'll give it to you. Like
exactly.
it's just like I'm laying you out. I'm laying myself out before you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It just kind of that incredible kind of romance. Uh,
yeah,
yeah, and every line of it, and then that it comes back and all of that. And I mean, they set that up even before, right? Like even in the pharmacy when she like, as a little girl, says she's gonna marry him one day. Like Mary's been in love with him
hmm
since she was a little girl. Uh, but yeah, I mean that's just yeah. I mean the romance is incredible.
yeah. I get it. It's one of those things where it's like everything you need is right in front of your face, and that's what God gives you, right? It goes back to the shop around the corner. Like it's always been there.
Right.
Like everything's always been there. Like you just have to see it.
And the sassy black housekeeper.
Oh yeah.
Like again, that's something that people would criticize now because it's this like white family in like the 20s. I guess that would be like the time period technically that has like a
Yeah.
black housekeeper or whatever. But like it's the way it's portrayed to it's so lighthearted. Like it's so lighthearted and stuff like that that like I don't know how anybody could criticize it, especially when it's depicting like the reality of what was. Like yeah.
Yeah.
Uh uh and she comes back at the end with like they're like the younger brother's like flirting with her and stuff like that's like the night of the dance he's telling her he loves her
Yeah.
uh and she's like eavesdropping on the conversation George is having with his dad, and then like at the very end when she comes in and she like dumps the money on the table with everybody else and she's like, I was saving this up for when I got me a husband. No, I was saving this up for a
Yeah.
divorce if I ever got me a husband. Yeah.
Oh man, yeah, no, yeah.
And I noticed it's subtle but direct references to the Christmas to a Christmas Carol, which it would have to do because I
Oh,
mean that
yeah.
was one of the most iconic Christmas stories ever. George even calls himself a miser when he's talking to his dad. He's like, I've been saving like a miser,
Yeah.
because he wants to go to college, blah blah blah, saving up for like a big adventure in his trip. But yeah, I mean, talking to Mary and yeah, lassoing the moon and all that. I was thinking like the male versus female themes, same as in the shop around the corner, where and it's not just stereotypes either, but kind of that romantic dance between the two sexes, right? This kind of, especially when he's calling on Mary that second time, right?
hmm
Mary's been thinking about that night that they had together that got seriously interrupted because George's dad had a stroke, and like but George was thinking about his adventure, the whole time, kind of.
Yeah.
Uh, even his mother says to him, this was a line that stood out to me. And I wonder what you think of this because it goes with that, where when he's going to call on her that night, uh, and everybody's encouraging him to go, his mother says to him, "That's a nice girl, Mary. The kind that will help you. The kind that could help you find the answers." That's what his mother says to him.
Hmm. Yeah.
And I was just wondering, yeah, what you think of that. And I think that because I think that's relevant to the romance and the kind of the male and female kind of like themes that we've talked about in both these films.
Hmm. I don't know. I mean, I guess she did help him find the answers because, like, when he was down at his lowest, she was the one that organized, let people know and organize, like, people to get him the money he needed. Like, that was the happy ending. It was all because of her, right?
The house,
Yeah.
320 Sycamore, even yeah, that same scene, right? She's like, "Don't throw the rock at it. Everybody throws rocks at that house. I like it. It's
Yeah.
romantic."
Yeah.
She built the home for him. They make that clear that she made that old house a home while
Yeah.
he wasn't paying attention, and yeah, she eventually solves the problem at the very end as well. Gives him the family, and obviously you can't have that without a man and a woman in terms of like procreating literally.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of, and yeah, I was thinking that it's like a really good way to put it. At least that line stood out to me this time because I was, this time is like my 100th time seeing it. I could pick out these tiny details where it's like, yeah, the kind that would help you find the answers. I guess I was thinking of kind of like the companionship that it takes both, the male and the female, the yin and the yang, kind of,
Yeah. No, I mean, and that's true. I mean, and it's also true on Shop Around the Corner. It's like,
yeah,
it's kind of that same like traditional aspect. That was the focus of like filmmakers for years, like authors for years. Like everyone knows this. It's just something that isn't, portrayed quite as much now as being important, but that's like what makes like it's like it's magic, it's destiny.
yeah. Christmas miracle.
Yeah, exactly. It's those type of things, and yeah, you need that male female aspect to create the family. And I don't know. Yeah, I guess. Well, that may be a controversial statement now, but yeah, I don't know. Okay, hell. I could try that later, maybe. But yeah, but yeah, for the most part, yeah, you need that contrast. You need those differing lifestyles. Like everyone needs to correct for their own faults, and people who can correct for their own faults like make the best couples. It's like the opposites. It's an opposites attract thing, but like not really, because that doesn't work out
Yeah,
all the time. But yeah, you do need some differences, right?
And not just that, like a different perspective, kind of like. And people would say, it's cliche, a woman's touch, right? Like,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like George is preoccupied with this adventurous life or whatever that keeps getting pulled out from under him. All of his plans for that falling through.
Yeah, he needed someone that was like a little bit more organized and steady than he was, right?
When I'm thinking about it now too, I'm thinking of like the Run on the Banks when they like depict the kind of Great Depression starting.
Mm-hmm.
Mary's the one that comes up with the cash, right? When they like don't have any cash there, and she pulls out the wad of money that they were saving for their honeymoon. Like she's the one that solves that problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes the house a home, solves the big money problem at the end as well. Like, the kind of woman that'll help you find the answers, right? Like, wife material.
Yeah, no, someone he can depend on when you're down. Yeah.
And I was thinking too, like when they showed Donna Reed right away, like I was like, man, Donna Reed is just gorgeous in this movie. Like,
oh, she is, yeah.
The beautiful mid to call your own, like the kind of the and I know it's like kind of that old school 40s, like it's filtered through the film and there's probably like cakes of makeup and all that on it, but it's still just kind of like, yeah, like she has to be a beautiful woman in this, has to be prettier than like the harlot girl, right? Valerie.
Oh yeah, and also yeah, who was just like, she was a prostitute, right? Like she was just a town whore. Like I mean, they
the
made
floozy,
it seem like she was just kind of like a flirty girl that like was about town, but like she was the whore, right? Like
banging everybody, but always had a special soft spot for George.
Yeah, apparently.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, yeah, Vi was, yeah, she was good. And
I was going to ask you this, like, is George Bailey like an everyman character, And I was thinking of that, like, in terms of like what he represents and like, yeah, that kind of like fire, that desire within him, the kind of, and that feeling of being trapped, right? Like the quiet desperation of not being able to live his adventurous life that he always fantasized about.
Yeah, no, he's definitely like an everyman. I mean, there's some qualities to him that. So, did you ever read The Secret Life of Walter Mitty?
I didn't read it, no, but I saw that Ben Stiller movie.
Well, that's okay. Yeah, they made a yeah, fuck. They made a movie in like the 50s about it too, and it was awful. Like no, just James Thurber was the author, and James Thurber is a great writer. I love him. And so The Secret Life of Walter Mitty was just like about this guy who worked this desk job who fantasized about doing like spy work and like detective work, and he had this intricate life in his head while he was working this desk job. And so it's sort of like just this average man that fantasizes about something, like just living a life that's much more interesting and greater. I mean, I don't know, Kafka could have been the same way, right?
Right.
Like he was just, was insurance? Is that what he did?
That's what they all did, yeah, back
Something.
then, yeah.
But yeah, it's some sort of desk job, and then he went home and like had this whole other realm that he lived in, like his own mind, right? So, what was the question originally?
But like George being like an everyman and kind of like, yeah, like that kind of fantasy, and not having the fantasy fulfilled, being trapped.
So,
yeah.
So the whole fantasy thing is that, yeah, I think that's like very common to people. Like it's been written about before. It's just like, I mean, I think everyone has a fantasy life. Like you don't really want to be doing what you're doing. I even think millionaires don't really want to be doing what they're doing. Like even that they're going to because they're millionaires and that's their best life. But like they could do what they want, but maybe they wish they could act. Maybe they wish they were fucking, Jack Nicholson or Robert De Niro. Like they want to be a musician. Like I think everyone has some idea of an alternative life that they want to live, no matter how famous or how successful you are in what you do. You have some idea of, I'd kind of like to really do this, but I can't.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I talked about this on a recent episode too with a guest where it was like, people don't like to admit this, but everybody has this kind of fantasy of their life as a movie, right? Like, where it is this kind of like, almost like it's like if this were a story playing out, like people picture that, they pretend that that's the case. What would they do? I guess maybe unless you're like some type of NPC or something, you don't, but like I think most people probably feel that, or maybe it's just the way film has affected our lives and stuff. That's like the story medium we always see most often, or at least used to. But yeah, I was just thinking of that, like, yeah, like George is, he's the everyman. He's like, yeah, he's not this wealthy millionaire. His friend Sam or whatever it is, he makes a bunch of mistakes. Like he turns down the plastics thing, like the offer to get in on the ground floor on plastics and stuff.
Yeah.
And he always ends up kind of, taking over his dad's business that like he didn't even want to do. But he kind of feels like he has to.
Yeah, I mean, in his own community, he's kind of the like, he's almost like a Howard Rourke a little bit. Like, I mean, he just kind of, he built this thing like, by himself. Like he has his own success. Like everyone looks up to him, right? Like, he runs a bank.
Right.
Like, he doesn't just work at a bank. He actually like owns it. So, I mean, yeah, he's more successful than the average man, but again, he just still has like all the relatable qualities of the average man.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that's it's pivotal to that too, with the kind of the American aspect of this kind of house and all of that, the car, kids, kind of, yeah, making some money. I think they like $20,000 or something is a lot of money a year back then.
Yeah.
That's what Potter offers him.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I was thinking of like another theme in this too, with the kind of, this is a story of kind of good versus evil.
Mm-hmm.
And we haven't talked about Potter too much, but like, yeah, Potter is the villain, and he's a very vindictive and evil man. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and like, yeah, go on.
Oh no, I mean, he's Scrooge. Like,
Yeah,
he's that Scrooge character that like everyone hates. And like Christmas, for some reason, like, I guess, like, I mean, I kind of like this quality about it, but it was always focused on like, you shouldn't be greedy, you should be generous, right? Like, so again, there were always themes from Christmas Carol to It's a Wonderful Life, where it's like you have people who are just greedy and always concerned about money and making the most money they can. I mean, in Potter, he was like very deceptive, right? He stole that money that George's assistant was depositing in the bank, right?
Yeah.
And then they came up short, and it was just always about these greedy people. And I mean, that's kind of like a theme amongst Christmas films, is like, you shouldn't be greedy, you should be generous, you should share, just care and be generous amongst everyone that you know. And that kind of like always reinforced that theme.
And the fact that Potter is portrayed as, he's old, he's sick, he's alone, he has no family and no one to love him and loves no one. And is like, and then George has to suffer the consequences of this guy being an evil son of a bitch. Like, when George comes to him desperate about the money missing, and he still doesn't, like, he just keeps it, right? He doesn't even mention that, like, he has the $8,000 like literally sitting in his desk because Uncle Billy is an idiot or whatever, like, and put it in the paper.
Yeah.
When he was gloating. It just, and he watches it. They keep showing him as he watches George and Uncle Billy kind of trying to find the money.
Yeah. No, and he doesn't say anything. And I mean, just, who's it? Is it Lionel Barrymore?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I think.
Yeah.
Is he Barrymore's, Drew Barrymore's, like, grandfather, great grandfather?
I think so.
Yeah.
But he was great as as Mr. Potter.
Yeah.
Crotchety. The perfect crotchety, greedy old banker type that you want to see in that role. Yeah, perfect villain. No, I loved it. I mean, again, you can't really improve on this movie.
Yeah.
Like, that's why it hasn't been remade. I guess there was one remake that I still have to investigate on what, like, channel that was on.
Yeah, we'll have to watch that. Yeah.
Some sort of recent remake, but yeah.
Bonus episode, dude.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. I think
I'm down.
Watch the remake.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things that you couldn't attempt. You can make. There are several stories probably like it out there on the Hallmark Channel, right?
Yeah.
Where there's some similar thing, right? But they're never going to call it "It's a Wonderful Life" and even try to compare themselves to this film. Yeah. It really is just, it's one of the defining American films, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I would put it up there with, this might be the best movie ever made. Like, I know it's hard to pick one of those, but if like there was a gun to my head, I'd probably say this one.
I wouldn't challenge you on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
And yeah, like that good versus evil. Like George is so good all the time, right? Like he's always doing the right thing at great personal cost to himself, even.
yeah.
And then Potter's just this evil, mean old man that steals and then accuses George of stealing. And he knows he didn't steal, and he still calls the police on him, and like he knows he didn't do it, like, and still is like trying to get him arrested for embezzlement and stuff, like just pure evil.
Yeah, just one of the most evil characters in film. Yeah, I mean, Potter. I mean, the whole name Potter, like even back then, like Potter's Field,
Yeah.
is like where they buried like the homeless people.
Yeah, the
Right.
unmarked,
And like
unclaimed bodies.
yeah, and you have this rich man named after a homeless person because, yeah, he may be rich, but really spiritually, he's homeless. Like he might as well be like he's Potter. Like like there are these false illusions about money and what makes you happy, and you realize from It's a Wonderful Life that it's well. There is kind of that contradiction because he does get a lot of money to save his his business. So I guess money does save things, but it was all his friends and neighbors that came in and gave him that money, right? They all heard that he was down and they were going to save him. So life is really just about friendships that lead to other beneficial things, like money. Maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just it's a very positive message overall, and it's like just a quintessential American tale.
Yeah. And I mean, yeah, when the people come in at the end too, it's like everybody that he touched, right? Like all the people that he was in their life, right? Like all the people that you have in your life all the time that maybe you do take for granted, right? Like even Potter mocks him at that one scene where he's like, why don't you go ask all those people for money, that you care so much about, like, and George is like, well, they don't have that kind of money, like, and not individually they don't, but like everybody together,
and I mean, that's the thing. Like, George was always about like his saving, his business and loan like thing was about giving honest people a chance,
right,
to do something, right? Like, it's different than like what happened in 2008 or whatever, where they're just giving people who like could not afford anything, tons of money to purchase a house, right? It wasn't like that. Like he was actually like giving lower rates to people who were working hard, had a job, and were contributing to their community, right?
Yeah. And that's when like they keep talking about like a $5,000 loan to build a house. Like that was like a lot of money back then.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
That's crazy.
$5,000 loan.
$5,000. Oh man.
That doesn't even buy you a car now. Like,
yeah.
That's insane, dude. But yeah, I mean that was crazy. Like the money was crazy, and I mean, yeah, like this is just like you said this when we were talking the other day. Like, and like we're there's just a warm feeling you get, not just like when you watch Capra films particularly, but like when you're watching a film like this, that it goes through such a tragedy, and then you have all these tragic things happening, and then good things happen, and then it comes to this head at the end where everybody's just literally dumping money on the table. like whatever it takes to help George Bailey when he needs help. It's like the first time he really needs help and can't do anything about it.
Yeah. No, it's like, yeah, it's just all of Frank Capra's films are just like so sentimental. Like Mr. Deeds Goes to Town, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, or whatever. Like, you know, he had so many films that were just about like the triumph of the human spirit, right? Just people having hope, and then suddenly reaching like the deepest depths of depression, and then coming back from it. And I mean, that's almost everyone I know.
Yeah.
Right. Like everyone you know has had some sort of story like that. And like Frank Capra, like he knew that, and he displayed that like early on in his films. And also just about the change that one man can make.
Yeah.
Right. Like one man can affect many different lives. I mean, that's what Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, Mr. Deeds Goes to Town were about. It's a Wonderful Life. You Can't Take It With You. Yeah, I mean, all those films were about like just one man making a change in maybe not the world, but at least his own world, right? His community, right? The people that he's close with.
Yeah, and it is like a very warm feeling that you get from it with that kind of. It's funny, like on Amazon when I was watching it on Prime, 'cause that's the only place that really has it.
Yeah.
It was like I think it said like feel good was one of the categories for like genre or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, yeah, like that's a genre of itself. And I think like especially Capra stuff, like the characters, you know, they're suffering for being good and then they're rewarded, but they're not getting like their wildest dreams coming true.
Yeah.
You know, they're not becoming like these like millionaires that go off into the sunset or something. They're getting like just enough, right, to fix the small issue or whatever. Like the reward is realistic, maybe more down to earth instead of like a big fantasy where you're just a good person and you get rewarded with riches or something. It isn't like that. It's more realistic. Yeah, more down to earth, more human.
Yeah.
With that kind of ending.
No, yeah, definitely. Yeah. No, Capra's a great director and has like a very good feel for like the human soul. One of his last films, Pocket Full of Miracles. It's about a homeless lady, and it's just like it's that same sort of like, you know, that homeless lady changes like the lives of people around her, and those people around her like care for her back. Like it's just Frank Capra was always about community. So it was like, yeah, you may not like affect the entire world, but yeah, it's just the people around you sometimes. And that's what like that is the lives of most people. Right. Most people aren't celebrities or like known throughout the country, the world, whatever. Like most people are just average people. So you can just make the lives better of people around you. And therefore also yourself, because it does do good for yourself when you do good for others.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like that's part of that Christian message that is in these films. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, there's so many parts to this movie too. There's so many great scenes where there's just so many things like the scene that always chokes me up. And really as I matured, that was the first scene that tripped me up, when he loses everything and he comes home, he walks home in the snow without his coat, and he's just like being mean to everybody. When he like grabs his son, when his son comes over to him, and he just starts crying, like grabbing him really tight because he just lost everything, like, and they don't know it.
Oh yeah.
The girl's like banging on the piano, and then he like gets up and he smashes that table.
Yeah.
And then like everybody just stops and stares at him, like his kids, his wife, everybody, and then he just kind of like breaks down. He's like, "I'm sorry, Mary." Like, oh man, like it's just. I think that's something that's that's a masculine trait too. I mean, like, yeah, like getting the anger reaction to destructive reaction.
Yeah, just like to heartbreak, like, to something massive that just changed your life. Yeah. Like where I mean, as a man, you want to be in control. And yeah, at that point, he just sort of kind of lost everything and was not in control of anything.
And then immediately regrets it, right? Like, and then when his son was asking him how to spell like all that stuff, he's like, what was it you wanted to know? And he's like, nothing, Dad. Like, and then he's like yelling at his daughter to play the piano again, and she just starts crying. Like he regrets it. He's like, oh, I ruined it. Like he just ruined it. Like, but I mean, I think that's just such a real thing that, frankly, you don't really see. I mean, you could see it in 47, right? There was no problem depicting that on screen. I mean, like in 1947. But I am just thinking of like a movie that captures like that tiny little aspect of that. Like, I really can't think of another one.
No, I mean, I can't really either off the top of my head.
Like, just an incredible kind of. And it's Christmas Eve, like, and then he just kind of runs to the bar, crashes his car into that tree.
Yeah. And I mean, that was like the Clarence character was also
let's talk about Clarence.
Great. Yeah. Clarence is great. Just really funny. And I mean, he's the type of guy that you'd want to like take to a bar, even though like he's an angel, so he doesn't drink. So, but he's like just very amiable, and he carries around this copy of Tom Sawyer.
Yes.
Which becomes kind of pivotal, I guess. So they mention in the beginning when the orbs in the sky are talking to each other, right?
Yeah.
And he's reading Tom Sawyer, and when he comes down, he's carrying it with him. And then in the final scene, Jimmy Stewart has the novel. And what did Clarence write in it?
It said, "Dear George, remember, no man is a failure who has friends."
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And that's like one of those.
And it's sitting on top of the pile of money. Yeah, like it just appears on top of the pile of money at the end.
Yeah.
And his wife's like, "Who's that from?" And he's like, "It's from a very dear friend of mine."
And like you're like, I'm already crying by this point.
Yeah, exactly.
And that happens. I'm like, that's a definite crying point. Clarence is great. Yeah, I love Clarence. And he gets that's the whole thing, that if every time a bell rings, an angel gets the wings, and the bell rang on like the Christmas tree, was it? Or someone, and
Zuzu points it out.
Yeah, Zuzu points it out, and then Jimmy Stewart says, every time a bell rings, an angel gets their wings, and so you knew that Clarence got his wings. So
I mean, every little detail in this movie is so tight, like it all matters. Like it matters so much to the
all
story.
Together.
Yeah, there's nothing superfluous, nothing just added in. It is so tight. And I mean, the guy Clarence is incredibly charming. One, like he's charming, and they make him kind of a comedy character even.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the fact that he was like a meek old man helps with that. But yeah, like the Tom Sawyer, and yeah, when he first appears and he's like saying those things, it's like freaking out the like lighthouse guy or whatever, like the toll operator on the bridge.
Yeah. No, he was that was a great scene when Jimmy Stewart woke up, in the toll booth operator's room, and Clarence was there, and he had it like was it a bloody lip, I think?
Yeah, because he got punched by the teacher's husband.
Yeah,
because he yelled at her on the phone.
Yeah, and then Clarence made it go away, and that's when Jimmy Stewart realized, like, oh, Clarence Guy's maybe who he says he is, right? Maybe an angel.
Yeah. And the Tom Sawyer, dude, I mean, the fact that it's a classic American literature being referenced in this classic, iconic American movie.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that's a huge deal. Like, you're not even allowed to mention the adventures of Tom Sawyer anymore because it's quote unquote racist or whatever. Like, you're not supposed to teach it. Like, they're taking it out of curriculums. And it's just kind of like, okay, like, that's another story. And I was thinking, like, why was Tom Sawyer included in this? And I was thinking, like, well, that's an adventure story, right? Like, kind of a coming of age. Tom Sawyer learns some hard lessons.
Mm-hmm. Maybe about, like a not a little bit of a bad boy.
Yeah.
And that I think Clarence was a little bit of a bad boy, and I guess he was 200 and some years old, so maybe like 1700s, 1800s. He may have done some stuff, right? Yeah.
But that's why I was like the bell ringing. Like I have this bell, I keep it on my desk, and it's literally a bell. And I keep it on my desk year round, where it's this, my parents gave it to me for Christmas one year. And it's just like a little bell, and it just says, it has engraved on it, like, It's a Wonderful Life.
Oh, that's great.
Kind of thing. And that's why I was thinking this time around, like, how much this movie has affected my life and how much it means to me every time I kind of watch it. Where I said, like, it is this kind of morality tale. I think it is an American morality tale, like good versus evil. Generosity, family. I think all of that is very, I mean, it's just so important to just the American story, like the American legend, the American myth, like the ether that makes up like what that makes America so powerful and so desirable, and like, the place everybody wants to be.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's, faith, family, friends, the Protestant work ethic, like a lot of these things is like, that's what made this country. And the shop around the corner and It's a Wonderful Life just kind of embody those, that spirit anyway.
And that urge to do good too, like the kind of, I'm thinking of that. Isn't it like a classic Christmas? It's a classic tale. I think it's like an old legend, right? Like, where like the family like gets each other gifts, but they're poor. I think like Little House on the Prairie and stuff did a version of this. A lot of TV shows at that time did like a version of this, where like everybody sacrifices something to get someone a gift.
Yeah.
And then like when they give the gift, they find out that they sacrificed the thing that they had gotten the gift for, right? Like a hairbrush, and the woman like cut her hair to sell her hair to like get somebody else a gift.
Yeah. It's like, sort of like the gift of the Magi.
Yes, I think that's the story.
The
right?
Henry sort of thing. Yeah, there's those sort of themes that
Yeah.
Again,
sacrifice.
Henry, the gift of the Magi is like, again, like one of those like quintessential American tales that like kind of align with this. Really, is just like giving something of yourself for other people, right? Something greater than you,
Yeah.
whether it's a community or God. Like it's the same, something larger than you, sacrificing yourself for something better.
And the kind of, I was thinking of like George praying there, like on the bridge, thinking about killing himself, looking down at the water. Like that's the first time George is like praying or anything like that. But like, and he says, I'm not a praying man, but if there's anything you could do, I don't know. I mean,
yeah, and that's when Clarence comes around, right?
yeah,
Yeah, and look, I'm Christian, like I believe in God, so, but even outside of like the religious factor of It's a Wonderful Life, the fact that there is some sort of like something greater than you that can save you, whether it's belief, some sort of like thought, like something that you can do that's outside of yourself that can save you, is like a very like big deal. And I think that kind of resonates throughout both of these films. Like whether you want to call it serendipity, coincidence, whatever, we all end up where we're at for a reason. And in The Shop Around the Corner, Jimmy Stewart and Margaret Sullivan get together in the end, and even though they were right in front of each other's faces, they didn't know it, but now here they are. And that happened for a reason. Like they were both, she went to that shop looking for a job that was serendipitous, or whatever you want to call it, but there's something greater going on there. If you go to It's a Wonderful Life, like even though his life may have not worked out exactly as he wanted it, George Bailey's life worked out perfectly because he really did have the best life with the people around him, right? It wasn't about like going to South America or, going to Europe or going on all these trips. It was about the people he knew around him. And you can have a wonderful life with those people and maybe never have gone outside of the country.
right.
Like it's one of those things that I think, like, in this day and age, like, every woman on dating apps is like, what are my hobbies? Like, I like to travel. Like,
Right.
I want to go and it's like, that's good. I like to travel too, but that's only because like we have easy access to travel right now. If it's the 1940s, like you can't get on a plane anywhere. You got to take a boat most places, right?
Yeah.
You want to go to Europe, you're taking a boat. And you can't get time off for that. It's just, so that wasn't really very reasonable back then. But you had this community, you had these people, wonderful people around you, and you have to make the most of your life like that. And it really is like if I compare and contrast like how we live now and what was going on back then, it's like there were so many more meaningful relationships going on back then because you were so much like more intertwined with your community. Whereas like now it's like you just want to get away from your community. You want to go like tons of different places and travel everywhere, which can be good, but again, it gets us further away from like where our home is, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, George Bailey, this it's right there, right?
Yeah.
And you don't even think about it until disaster kind of strikes.
Yeah, he takes it for granted,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, so basically this is just, I mean, yeah, I would call this is the best movie I think maybe ever made. Like you always see those like top 100 movies ever made or whatever, and there's always like, I mean, it's usually on that list, right? Like somewhere in there.
Yeah, it's usually top 20, I'd say.
Yeah. It should be. I don't know how it's not number one every single time, dude. Like I don't know what movie's better than this in terms of having all the feel, like all the parts, like every little part.
Oh yeah.
Kind
I
of.
mean, I've seen Casablanca, I don't
Same,
know, 10, 15 times. I don't watch it. I don't watch it every year.
right.
You know what I mean? Like, but
Yeah.
it's live. Definitely, yeah. I watch it every year. So it's just out of the films I watch every year. I mean, that's kind of maybe the only one.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I love Christmas movies, so there's a bunch that I usually go to
Mhm.
every year. And now that I have a daughter, like I have like a reason to like rewatch them. Like, well, I have to show her this,
Oh yeah.
like even more so. And I mean, I would rewatch them all anyway, but like, yeah, there's some that I just watch every year. It's a Wonderful Life. Usually those like the good Rankin and Bass ones if you could find them, but
Yeah, I was gonna say that must have been the reason for you, like trying to find the Rankin and Bass is like, yeah, you have a
yeah.
daughter, like, yeah, yeah, those are like fun films to show.
And there's good songs, like there are good songs in it. Uh, yeah,
The Snoopy Christmas, I do like that. I like the
yeah.
Snoopy Christmas one is good.
That's another one that's like impossible to find, dude. Like,
Really?
I guess they're all on like Apple or something. Like,
Oh,
Apple
okay.
just owns all of these. Like, and then nobody else has, yeah, like Charlie Brown Christmas or uh, any of those, like the Peanuts holiday ones, like the Great Pumpkin or Happy Thanksgiving Charlie Brown or
Oh, wow.
I think they're all on Apple TV, and it's like the one I don't subscribe to, so I guess I'm gonna have to see some of those. But it's like, yeah, I mean that one, dude, like the soundtrack alone, the Charlie Brown Christmas. I mean,
Yeah, no, that's classic.
so
Yeah.
iconic. I mean, yeah,
Yeah, no, I always love the Charlie Brown specials.
yeah. It just, it's because it's about Christmas. Like I said, I've always had this thing with Christmas. It's always had this special place in my life and kind of what it means and what it's for and all of that. So I'm always just like, yeah, Christmas is good. It's a good thing, and it's good to have it at the end of the year every year.
Yeah, and it always lasts like it's like, lasts like a month or so, it at least
Yeah.
lasts like a month. Like everyone in the month of December is like in the Christmas spirit. And sometimes even before then, and sometimes even well into January. So I always think that's a good thing.
Yeah, of course. And yeah, like putting on the Christmas music and stuff like that, like decorating with the Christmas music. That's so important. Yeah. At least it's important, like kind of traditions in that way. Like it's the almost like one of the most important traditions, I feel like, Christmas.
Yeah, I always go up to some of the the Henderson neighborhoods here.
Yeah.
Yeah, just browse around, look at some of the houses there.
They have some cool light shows here. They have that one in Summerlin, but it costs money. But I think there's one at the FLM factory,
Oh yeah.
where they have that cactus garden. I think they put lights all over it for Christmas, and I think that one's free, but it's much
Uh,
smaller, you know?
okay, because I've been to the Cactus Garden.
Yeah.
I haven't been this year yet, but yeah, no,
Uh,
it'd be,
but dude, I mean, my neighborhood, nobody's put up any Christmas shit except like me and my wife.
oh wow.
Yeah. I can't believe it.
It's weird.
Yeah, dude, I know. Like no Christmas wreaths or anything, like on the doors.
I live in an apartment, so it's just not too much. Go.
Yeah,
But I don't know, it's in the arts district, and there's some like stuff like some of the businesses of like
right.
you know strung out some tinsel and stuff, and like some Santa decorations. So
Yeah. The romance around the decorations, the
oh
mistletoe,
yeah.
the fires roaring, right? The hot cocoa, the hot beverages, the kind of winter Christmas. There are these things that make us feel like, and yeah, I'm always obsessed with this. So every year I try to do like this kind of like reflection on that, where I'm just like, yeah, like what is it about this specific tradition that like everybody likes? And even if you're not Western or even not Christian, and you don't like they don't have that in your religion or your country or something, like you're envious of it,
Yeah,
they want to get a tree. Yeah.
yeah, everyone loves it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's the whole thing with like, even like Jewish people like in the US, it's like
Have a tree or
a lot of them
something.
are like, yeah, it's like, well, like we celebrate Hanukkah, but we also have a Christmas tree and
Right.
I mean, it's a lot of people. So it's yeah, everyone loves it. Like every culture loves it. They want it. Um,
Because it's just a good, positive thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and it just is, and it's one of those things that like has just been a day. Like it's to celebrate Christ being born,
Yeah.
but it's become more than that. Like it's just become this season where everyone like is in the giving spirit, feels good, like they kind of remember what they have, they reflect on their life. Again, it also like goes hand in hand with the new year. Like uh it's really is a very special time because people are just like more sensitive, they're more open, a little bit more caring, right?
Yeah. And I mean,
Right.
yeah, like I said, I mean, Christmas packaging, Christmas advertising. I even like on sitcoms and like the Christmas episodes, like I like when it's taken seriously. I mean, that's why I do Christmas episodes on my podcast. I mean, like I like that, like the Christmas specials and stuff like that. Like, the old school variety shows.
Oh yeah, no,
Like
my
this.
favorite, the Married with Children.
Yeah.
It's in fact their Christmas episode is called "It's a Wonderful Life."
You're right.
Yeah,
It's probably like
it's a
kind of a
wonderful
spoof,
life.
right? Like,
Yeah, so it's yeah, and it's like a parody of "It's a Wonderful Life,"
right.
whereas if Al didn't exist, and yeah, it's just like all like I remember the Roseanne Christmas episodes, like I mean, all yeah. There was always a Christmas episode for every TV show that was on. Like
Yeah.
they didn't miss. Like it was, you had
You,
to have like you had to keep in line with the holidays. You had to have a Thanksgiving episode,
right.
Christmas episode. You had to do something about the New Year. You had to do a Valentine's Day episode. Like everyone had their own episodes, and like yeah, it was just great because it could depend on Christmas episodes from every single TV series.
Right. And it's always like has that kind of message, that spirit to it too, that Christmas miracle kind of vibe. Even like I'm thinking even more recent stuff like The Office always had like a Christmas one every year, and it was always
Oh,
like it became after that show got so big and it was like a huge thing. Like people were it was almost something to like look forward to. Oh, the Christmas episode, and like it'd always be like usually pretty well done.
yeah.
Uh, but yeah, I mean that's just always great. Yeah.
Yeah, no, the Office one was good. I mean, all those like every show. Like, I don't watch TV now. At least
Yeah.
any like the network shows really. So I don't know if like Abbott Elementary or whatever is big now has Christmas episodes, but I imagine they do
Yeah, you
because
have
you've
to.
always had to
Yeah.
keep that formula. And I mean, I don't know, as bad as some of those shows may be now, like at least they've I don't know, at least they kept the Christmas formula. Like,
Exactly.
should always have a Christmas show. Like, yeah, you need it.
And it's I mean, for writers out there too, if you ever try to write some type of Christmas thing like that using the formula, it's hard. Like, it isn't like, I mean, obviously, yeah, writing's hard, period, but like to actually make like a good Christmas style, like Christmas themed story, it's hard.
The payoff is good though, because
Yeah.
like, if it's good, it'll get read every year.
Yeah, or like
Right.
made into
Yeah.
something every year. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's the, I guess, I think that's why there's just so many Christmas movies turned out, is because they figure, well, you'll get one hot one, maybe that'll be,
A classic.
yeah, just, yeah, one everyone's gonna, turn on every year. But
They always lie about it. Like, they're saying that about Red One now, that stupid Dwayne Johnson movie, who should just not be in movies. I don't know why. I've never seen a good movie that The Rock is in, dude. But like, he's in this Christmas movie, and they're like, "Oh, it's an instant classic." They're like, "So I'm like, no, it isn't. Like, nobody knows, nobody cares. The Rock is not in any movie that's an instant classic. Like, he's not in a single movie that was ever even decent. Like,
Pain and Gain was a very good movie.
that's true. I liked Pain and Gain,
Okay.
but still,
Other than
like,
that, I don't know. But what was he was? It's a Christmas movie.
Yeah, dude, it's this new one that just came out. It's on Prime. I've been meaning to watch it. Maybe I'll watch it sometime this leading up to the holidays here, but I just couldn't get over it. Yeah.
All right, maybe I'll give it a check. Maybe I'll check it out. I don't know, but yeah, that sounds crazy. But yeah, no, I'm not a huge fan of The Rock, except for like Pain and Gain was very good.
Yeah.
I like that movie.
And I did like those Brendan Fraser mummy movies, but like he's like barely in that one. Where he's like the scorpion.
Scorpion King.
Yeah. But yeah, man. I mean, any final thoughts on It's Wonderful Life, or Shop Around the Corner, or Christmas, or?
No, I mean, two perfect movies that convey the Christian spirit and the Christmas spirit.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Absolutely.
that's about it. Yeah.
Same, man. Yeah. I mean, It's a Wonderful Life, I would put it up there as maybe the best movie of all time ever made. Yeah, I think I'd say that. That's how I feel.
Yeah, it's certainly, like, I mean, as far as as far as the American canon goes,
Yeah.
that's like, it's kind of one of the quintessential American films.
Nothing else like it.
Yeah,
Nothing else like
I
it.
mean, you can show it to any foreigner and be like, "This is what America is like."
Or like in Home Alone, where it's like in Spanish or in French, or they do both, right? They do it in Spanish and in French, because the first one's in French when they're in Paris, and then the second one they're in Florida, and it's like in Spanish.
Oh yeah,
Because they're like in Miami.
It's like inside joke, or throwback to the first Home Alone. Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's on TV every year. That's
it's on.
time,
Yeah.
In the
Yeah.
90s, it was always on. Yeah.
Everyone watched it in the 90s. Yeah. But yeah, it was very strange. It went from it was on all the time at Christmas to it was never on
Yeah.
one day. And it was like, the executives just like assumed everyone was sick of it. Like, I don't know. It was very weird, but I think that's corrected itself.
Yeah. Even now, you can only get it on Prime, really. Like, I guess it's on some other stuff like Freevee, which I think is owned by Prime anyway, and all that. But
And Freevee's free, I think.
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. It's like you have to watch ads, but you have to watch ads with Prime now too. So
Yeah,
like,
but
pay
I know
extra.
they do show it on like NBC or something.
Yeah,
like,
usually on Christmas Eve or Christmas.
Christmas Eve.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they'll air it on network TV, but. Yeah, man. I mean, this has been great, Eric. I mean, thanks for doing this, man. Last minute and all that.
Dude.
Yeah. Merry Christmas, dude.
Yeah, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to all those listeners out there.
Heavy.
Bored.
Heavy.
I am heavy bored.
such a lack of gratitude for life. Bored. I aspire to boredom, I should say.
Bored. Heavy.
I am heavy.
Bored.
Has you the night sweats and the day sweats, pal? Pal, I do.